Tonight, the precipice of history.
We will make America great again.
Together, we all will build a brighter future for our nation.
Is Kamala Harris about to become the first woman president of the United States?
We are not going back.
Or will Donald Trump get 4 more years in the White House?
We had the greatest economy in the history of our country.
Who will Texans choose, and by what margin?
The race for U.S. Senate, Republican Ted Cruz fighting for his political life.
The Constitution is worth defending.
Democrat Colin Allred is polling strong and raising far more money than Cruz.
And this November, I'm going to beat Ted Cruz.
But can Allred turn all that money into actual votes? School vouchers and the future of public education are also on the line tonight. Will voters send enough Republicans to the legislature to finally pass their priority? Or will Democrats and rural voters protect public schools again? And what will Dallas decide? 3 propositions on the ballot could significantly change how City Hall operates. Polls are about to close in most of Texas. In-depth results, expert analysis, and journalists hard at work across the state and right here in the WFAA newsroom. Coverage of the historic 2024 election
in 5, 4
begins now
3
on WFAA.
2, 1, and cue.
The campaigns are over. Now you will decide who wins and who loses tonight, and no one else has more robust coverage of the Texas vote than WFAA here. Good evening, I'm Jason Whiteley. Thank you for joining us on WFAA Plus and our other streaming platforms. Here we are at 6:47. Already a lot has been happening, especially in the last hour here. Polls have closed on the East Coast. There are 3 things we will be watching for tonight. The vote count is underway over there. The polls will be closing here in Texas in about 13 minutes or so from right now. And for the first time so far, the first presidential election so far here, you will be able to watch live vote counting. It might be like watching paint dry, but we will have a window inside the largest counties as that actually unfolds here in the coming hours here. The world is also watching tonight to see who's going to win the presidential race. And watching all of the numbers come in tonight is going to be Jason Wheeler. He's on the big board. Jason, what are you expecting?
Well, Jason, the map is already starting to populate. Tonight, we are relying on the Associated Press and ABC News to call the races in these individual states. And when they do, we put them up here on the board. You can see, where the polls have closed an hour earlier than we are, obviously, that those have started to come in. Right now, former President Trump at 23 electoral votes, Vice President Harris at 3. You need 270 electoral votes to win. We're going to keep watching this nationwide, of course, but also what's happening here in Texas as we get that early vote, especially, which we're expecting right after polls close in about 11 and a half minutes from now. And of course, we're watching that big U.S. Senate race here as well. The last time around, that one was really tight, historically tight, so we'll be keeping you up to date on that as well, Jason.
All right, along with Jason, we do have a panel of political experts in studio with us tonight that we're going to rely on to add context to the numbers. So with us at this hour, Dr. Kimmy King, professor at the University of North Texas in Denton. Wade Emmert, former general counsel for the Republican Party of Texas. Bud Kennedy, columnist at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And Domingo Garcia, former national president of LULAC. You will hear from them along with other guests here in the coming hours tonight. So let's start things off with what is happening at this hour. We have reporters across North Texas and across the state as well. But let's begin in North Texas tonight and in McKinney, specifically in Collin County, where already there has been some trouble in McKinney at Gay Library, where there's been some electioneering citations written by McKinney PD. Jobin, tell us what you've learned.
Jason, yeah, it's been mostly an uneventful day here at the polls in Collin County, which is a great thing. It started off with the morning rush. We expected some long lines, some long wait times at some of these polling places. At the most we saw was 40 minutes, and then we saw another rush right during lunch, and we're expecting another rush here. Now, there isn't a rush now here at Gay Library. There were about 15, 20 people just outside the door. That's not there now, so again, a 0 wait time here at Gay Library. You have, 11 minutes to get in line and get here to get your vote here at Gay Library. But we're hearing this source with the city is telling us And they confirmed to me through code compliance that 2 people were cited for violations of city code as it relates to electioneering. Now, 3 summons have been handed out in total. One person obviously got 2 summons, and they have to do with signage and flag rules. We had a chance to talk with those 2 people who received those summons. They say it is their constitutional right to have signage. From what they're telling us, they had their signage inside their vehicles, but they were parked close to where voters were hoping to were coming in. And so that's going to be an issue that they're going to have to deal with. Again, 3 summons here in Collin County, here at this gay library, something that they're going to have to deal with. And at some point, they're going to have to meet a court and a judge and discuss what exactly has happened here to receive those 3 summons. Reporting live here in McKinney, I'm Jobin Poiniger.
Jobin, that's interesting. Thanks a lot. Those are Republican supporters who are out there who were cited, according to our sources here, cited by McKinney PD, cracking down on something that happens in a lot of places from what we understand. But let's talk about the biggest race of the night, the race for U.S. Senate in Texas, Allred versus Ted Cruz. We are with both campaigns tonight. With the Allred campaign, Morgan Young is there, and with the Cruz campaign in Houston, it's Teresa Woodard. Teresa, let's start with you. No one's really in the room yet, it looks like, behind you, but I anticipate that the mood there is probably a little cautiously optimistic. All right, we had a little trouble hearing Teresa there. We'll get back with her in just a moment here. Morgan, let's start with you. You are in Dallas here with the Allred campaign at the Longhorn Ballroom, where he is holding his watch party tonight.
Well, Jason, that's absolutely right. And you, as you were talking to Teresa, you were saying that there weren't that many people there. People have not arrived at our party either. It gets started at 7. So right now we've got a big empty music venue that's really full of reporters from across the state. As you said, this is a race that has eyes on it from all across the state, all across the country. So it is no surprise that we have statewide and national media here. You know, Colin Allred held his final campaign event today. It was a block walk, door knocking, phone bank kind of meshed together, really taking a time to thank his supporters and let them know that in this race, every single vote counts. They have really been trying to be strategic, eyeballing those voters who are moving to Texas, who have moved to Texas since the last time that this seat was up for grabs back in 2018. I know we've really talked about that number because it is significant, especially when you look at the outcome of that race in 2018. They've also really been targeting voters who have maybe been in Texas for decades and just haven't typically voted for a Democrat. He has really been pushing himself as maybe a more moderate choice and really trying to appeal to those voters, especially on the issue of abortion. I know we've talked about so many issues in this race, but that really seems to be the one he's been honing in on, especially in the final stretch of his campaign. We have seen him hold multiple press conferences, sending out a letter signed by doctors and Texas women, really criticizing Texas's current ban on abortion, and of course blaming that ban on Senator Ted Cruz, his opponent in this race. His message has been consistent. He claims it's time for something new for Texas. He believes he is that something new, and that has been his message this entire time. Jason.
All right, Morgan, thanks a lot for that insight. Let's bring in the panel now to talk about what to expect here, and we will start with the Democrat on the panel, Domingo Garcia. You know, Colin Allred has outraised Ted Cruz. There's been a lot of hope in him from Democrats. What do you think we're going to see tonight?
A close race. Allred has run a really strong campaign, raised a lot of money, record numbers, more than Beto. He's been able to keep it close, running down the middle and painting Cruz as sort of this extremist right-winger, anti-abortion, anti-Democrat, voted to not ratify the results in 2020. So I think it's going to be a close race.
Wait, let me get to the counter side of this here, because true, Allred has raised more money, but Allred hasn't led any of the polls. The polls have been within the margin of error. How close is it at the end of the day?
Well, I hate to disagree with Domingo, but I'm going to. Close is relative. It'll be close in the sense that it's not as close as Beto winning by, with Cruz winning by just 2.6% of the vote. I think it's going to be at least 5% and maybe as high as 7%. And so that's close in Texas, generally speaking, between Republicans and Democrats, but it's not close in terms of Allred actually having a chance to win this election. We were here during the primary wondering why Allred was interested in running for this seat now, knowing it's a presidential year. And to me, the metrics have not changed. This would be a tough year for anyone, any challenger of a Republican in a presidential year where someone like Trump is polling so high in Texas.
It is indeed, but Kimmy, let me ask you, you know, at the end of the day, it is tough for a Democrat in this state, but Allred took the chance, and by all accounts, he has done pretty well leading up to decision night.
And I think in general, any Senate race for a Democrat this year across the country is going to be tough as well. I think those points are well taken. I think you also saw in the debate that perhaps Allred did not do as well as some had perhaps wanted him to do. There were a couple of missed opportunities. Yet at the same time, he has really come back. And close is very relative in Texas, especially when you've seen going back to 2012 presidential margins of somewhere around 16%, but they've dropped steadily down to 9% and now 5%. So depending on how he does tonight, lots of people are going to be talking about the purple thing again.
Oh, let's don't even bring that. It's way too early to start talking about Texas being purple again here. Bud, what do you think? What's your read on this? 5 to 7 points is not what the polls have shown, but that's what a lot of people are telling me over the last few days.
You know, I've said 2.5 to 4. I think it might be up to 5, but you know, some of this is the same questions in the national race. All these Republicans voted, all these people with Republican voting history, did they vote against the incumbent, as many of them have an anti-incumbent bent in all these elections, or you know, were they women with a Republican history who crossed over and voted for Allred? Who are these Republicans and how did they vote?
Yeah, and there are 1 million new voters that have no history of voting yet in Texas, and I'll be curious to see how they voted in the early voting so far. We are 3 minutes and 12 seconds out before the polls close in Texas across most of the state. So speaking of the Senate race, we do have the audio fix for Teresa Woodard. She is in Houston tonight with the Cruz campaign. All right, Teresa, I can hear you now.
Are you sure, Jason? Can you hear me now? All good? Yeah, so we were talking earlier about the energy that the Cruz campaign is sort of feeding off of. We know that the senator spent this morning on the phone doing radio interviews with small radio stations all across the state of Texas. He was really trying to hone in on maybe some of those rural voters, try to encourage them to get out and vote on Election Day if they have not voted early. So I definitely think that the energy is with this campaign. Cautiously optimistic is the term that campaigns always throw around on Election Day, but it certainly applies tonight. Now, Jason, you and I have covered many election nights in Texas, been out at different watch parties throughout many years, and I wanted to tell you about something that feels a little different at the Cruz campaign tonight. So every media member who came through was screened. We all had the wands waved over us, and also all of our equipment was screened as well. And I can tell you that is different than other campaign watch parties that I have covered. In fact, I was thinking back in 2022, covering Governor Abbott's re-election campaign, and we certainly did not go through screening like that. So it's just kind of probably a note about where we are and how tight security needs to be when it comes to politics all across the country, but even here in Texas. A couple other things about this campaign, you know, so much was made back in 2018 when Cruz was facing off against Beto O'Rourke about that being the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. Well, they eclipsed that several weeks ago in this particular race. They have far outspent what they did in 2018, but this is not the most expensive race in the U.S. this year. But clearly, we have all seen so many ads for so many weeks on end. I know there's a lot of people breathing a sigh of relief that will finally be over. But just again, to recap where things stand tonight, the media was let in about an hour and a half ago. We've all got set up here on the risers as we're looking over the stage, and I am betting that in the next maybe half an hour or so, we are going to have a very full house with a lot of people here anxiously awaiting to see what the numbers do for them tonight.
All right, Teresa, thanks for that insight there. Here we are less than 60 seconds away until polls close. We should have some of the first numbers within the next few minutes from the Texas Secretary of State's office. What's significant about tonight and these early vote numbers, more than 9 million Texans have voted early. A tremendous number. It's not as high as 2020. But Bud, we talked about the Senate race. I want to ask you about the presidential race. The question tonight that we've been watching is the margin. Are the Democrats going to continue to close that margin in Texas with Republicans? Republicans have been trending downward over the past few cycles. Democrats have been trending up, but Republicans still have the lead.
You know, and I think it's still about the same as it was 4 years ago. There have been so many more people moved to Texas, so many of them here to There are conservatives who come for Texas for success, low taxes. The Texas growth is predominantly Republican growth. On the other hand, the Democrats have finally gained ground after 30 years of wandering in the darkness.
And you just heard the little bell there. The polls have officially closed across most of the state. So in the next few minutes here, we'll be interrupting the conversation with hopefully some of these early vote results. 9 million votes cast so far. What do you think about the presidential race here? Because I guess you're going to have a different take than Bud, Wade.
Well, in 2020, Trump carried Texas by just 5 percentage points. The polls now I've seen as high 7 or as high as 11. So it looks like this year he may actually carry Texas more strongly than he did in 2020. So to me, that shows that the Republicans are still strong in Texas, and that strong Republican candidates are going to win Texas pretty consistently for the foreseeable future.
Well, Kimmy, that shows me that Republicans are getting stronger in Texas if they're widening this margin.
Yeah, on the other hand, if you look at the early voting turnout, it seems to be inconsistent. If you look at like Denton County, for example, it tends to be wildly high. I'm going to go with the conventional wisdom that everybody has been focusing on. It's going to turn on those suburban voters turning out and the position that they take on different issues. If you look at polling, early voting exit polls out east indicated that the top of the issue, surprisingly, was not the economy or immigration. It was actually about democracy and threats to democracy. And obviously those kinds of questions can be taken different ways. But this is going to be an election like no other in any point in history.
And let me ask you the same question then, because I think you're exactly right, Kimmy. Domingo, why are Republicans hitting a ceiling?
I think they have maxed out. The fact of the matter is we have 1 million new voters.
I said Republicans, Democrats, I'm sorry, Domingo.
No, I think the Republicans have maxed out. The Democrats are coming up, and we're just looking at math.
Yeah.
Every 2-4 years, Democrats keep edging up closer and closer. The fact of the matter is the Republican base, they're dying out and they're moving out. And the Democrats are increasing their numbers, young voters, naturalized voters, and people coming in from California and other states that tend to be a little bit more liberal and moderate than some of the right-wing Republicans we have in rural areas.
But young voters haven't showed up for this election so far,
They showed up for Beto,
especially
and that's why he got so close.
Yeah.
And they might be turning out again.
Well, let's pause this conversation. I want to bring in one of our congresswomen, a Republican Congresswoman, Beth Van Dyne from Irving. She's with us tonight from the Gaylord Hotel, I believe at the Tarrant County Watch Party. Congresswoman, it's good to see you tonight. Of course, you are up for re-election. I don't think it is, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I think you probably will be fine from what I've seen with the polling. Tell me what you're expecting to see tonight with the Ted Cruz, Colin Allred race and with the presidential race here in the state.
Yeah, look, I think Ted Cruz has done a fantastic job of representing the conservative values in Texas. I think, the race that Colin Allred is running is support me because I'm a nice guy and I am bipartisan. But the problem is that his voting record doesn't support that. In fact, his voting record is about 99% with Nancy Pelosi. So I think when we start talking about the issues that are really important to Texans, especially North Texans, you're looking at border control and the crime that they see as a result of illegal immigration and the cost of living. And those two things, I think Ted Cruz has proven himself to have the solutions and to fight for them. So I think in that race, you're definitely going to see Ted Cruz pull ahead. I think on the presidential race, it is very close to call, but I do believe that Trump is going to pull through. I think people are going to remember what he was able to accomplish 4 years in office. They're going to remember how great the economy was, how safe the border was, and how safe the rest of the world was. I don't think anybody is going to want to vote for the status quo, which is stagnant economic growth, which again is increased crime in our streets and wars breaking out around the world. So I think it's going to be a good night for Republicans tonight, and I'm going to keep running, through the ticker tape. At least I'm hoping. I don't take anything for granted, and we've been working all day to make sure we're getting votes out.
Well, Congresswoman, let me ask again about the question we had here in the studio, and that was specifically about the Texas margin with President Trump and with Vice President Harris. The Democrats have been closing that margin over the last few cycles, but everything we're kind of hearing is that the Democrats may have hit a ceiling and the Republicans are, moving back up with it, potentially tonight.
Again, I think you've seen hundreds of millions of dollars that Democrats have spent in this state over the last several years to try to make an example of Texas, to try to turn Texas blue, and it has been rejected year after year by voters. You're going to see the exact same thing this year. People are sick of what they're seeing at the border, and Texas, let's face it, is taking the brunt of that. When you have to have a state spend over $6.5 billion to protect the borders because the federal government isn't doing their job, a federal government that's being led by Biden and now candidate Harris, that is affecting Texans. And not only are they not doing their job, but when Texas tries to do that job, they sue them. I think you're going to see that taken very seriously by Texans across the state tonight, and I think you're going to see that with a very large majority voting for President Trump.
And Congresswoman, we notice in the background there's quite a party for Tarrant County Republicans. You guys seem pretty optimistic.
I think we are. And this is our party for our supporters who are including both Tarrant County and Dallas County here. You're seeing, I think we had over 1,200 people RSVP for this party because people all want to be together when they are celebrating, and they want you. If you could feel the energy in this room, you would be shocked. And I think you're going to see that across the country.
Congresswoman, it's always good to see you. Thank you for the time tonight.
Great to see you too.
Thank you. Let's bring the panel back in on that, because at the end of the day here, the Republicans in Tarrant County are partying tonight. Bud, you're my Tarrant County expert on the panel tonight. Should they be partying tonight?
I think Republicans in Tarrant County are going to have a big night. I've said that I thought maybe one Democrat might carry the county. I have in the last few cycles. That still might happen again, although I see in the early numbers that is not coming out that way.
We have some new numbers here, that our first numbers of the night, and these numbers, let's see where these are from. These are the national president numbers so far, and this is 1% reporting, but still we're talking about almost 10 million people voting. Not exactly clear yet. I'm going to get with Wheeler in a moment and find out where these numbers are from. 54% to 45%. This is likely East Coast numbers, likely southern states, I would presume. Obviously, probably including Kentucky and Indiana as well, which have both been called, and West Virginia, I believe, which have all three been called for President Trump. Here are Texas numbers, and this is kind of what we were discussing a moment ago. The difference between these two here is the conversation we were just having. 1 out of 10 votes has already been counted. That's what we're looking at here, but there's a 2-point margin. And this is what we're discussing. If Democrats can close that margin, then that means we might be turning purple at some point, Kimmy. But I don't know. Everything I hear, and every time we're in the studio, guys, every few years, we always say, oh, maybe next cycle, maybe 2028. Domingo, what do you think?
I remember when Dallas County was all Republican.
2006, right?
Yeah, like 2004.
Okay.
We call those the good old days. That was the last century.
Yeah, and the first Democrat, Sheriff Lupe Valdez won, the first Democrat, and then Sally Montgomery run for judgeship. And then after that, the dam broke loose, and now Dallas County is a Democratic county.
Sure.
I think the same thing's going to happen statewide. All you need is that first Democrat to win statewide, and then I think it's pretty much it's over for the Republican Party.
But here's the thing, Bud. The largest group of Republican voters, growing Republican voters, is the Hispanic population. You see, we flipped back in 2022 2 House districts in South Texas, 2 Republican districts. We're trying to hold on to those this cycle. We're now gunning for a couple of more. The Republican Party is growing because Hispanics are coming into the Republican Party faster than ever before. So to the extent that the Hispanic population continues to grow in Texas, so does the Republican majority.
Well, let's continue this conversation with some more new numbers here to give us an idea of kind of what things are looking like. Polls have only been closed for 9 minutes or so here, so these numbers will be trickling in the next few minutes. This is 20% reporting. This is likely, some of the early vote from across the state, but Democrat Colin Allred, 50% of the vote, with more than 1 million votes so far, compared to Ted Cruz at 48% of the votes. Now, before we get too far, we all know what happened in 2018, right? We all know what happened in 2018. We were here in the studio, and we saw Beto O'Rourke get out in front with the early vote and the urban vote, and then within a few hours or so, the rural vote came in and changed that. Kimmy, what's your first reaction?
Yeah, the political scientist is here to tell you none of this matters until you see where those votes are coming from.
Sure.
What percentage is mail-in, especially because we have such a high count. There had also been concerns about overseas ballots, which can be interesting in terms of the impact that they can have and how they're tossed into it. And don't forget that there's this huge distinction between rural versus urban divide and who is able to get their ballots in more quickly and get them counted and locked over to be set to sleep.
Yeah, and when we were preparing for this, Bud, too, I know you're probably working on deadline here, but Bud's tapping away here on the keyboard. But, you know, when we were preparing for this, we did have this conversation about this is what we experienced in 2018.
We know that about 9 o'clock it'll all change, that all the urban votes come in, and we'll see this some in the presidential race, too. The urban votes in a state like North Carolina will come in, and then the rural votes will come in, and they'll go the other way. We'll be prepared now. We won't we won't start calling it for somebody we didn't call it.
Sure.
We won't start talking about it looks like somebody's winning until those votes from West Texas, all those votes from west of I-35 come rolling in. That's where Ted Cruz has campaigned. That's where he's taken his bus tour. All the cities, Lubbock, Midland, Odessa, San Angelo, he's taken it out. There are as many voters west of I-35 as there are in Houston. He needs to win all those votes west of I-35 to match a Democrat.
And he likely will, because that's the GOP stronghold there too. So let's zoom in a tad here and talk about what's happening in Dallas County, because there's a few propositions on the ballot tonight. We have new numbers, the initial numbers to show this. So there is a group called the Dallas Hero Initiative. It has successfully gotten 3 propositions on the ballot. Propositions S, T, and U. We'll show you what we have for the rest of them in just a moment. Proposition S, though, would essentially allow any citizen to sue Dallas city leaders if they don't follow city ordinances, if they don't follow the law. And I've been talking to multiple sources for the past few days to see if there's any internal polling on this, to see how close it is. And both sides are essentially telling me this thing is going to be really tight. We don't really know which way it's going. But Proposition S is the first set of numbers we have so far on it. Cole Sullivan is covering this for us, and he is out talking to both sides tonight. I want to bring in Cole right now with what he's hearing on this. Cole?
Hey, Jason, so we looked at some of those early numbers for Proposition S you had there, 51% for. I've got some other numbers on the other 2 propositions. T, which would tie the city manager's performance to a survey of at least 1,400 Dallas residents, performance pay, I should say, to a survey of about 1,400 Dallas residents, 58% opposed, you see there. And then on Proposition U, which is the most controversial one of all 3 of these so-called hero amendments, you can see 52% of folks in these early numbers are opposed to Proposition U. But Jason, you talked about just how tough it is to get voting, to get polling data on this, and it's partially because a lot of voters don't know about these measures. They're at the very bottom of the City of Dallas ballot. So a lot of people walking in to vote for president and for Senate are going through more and more races that are becoming more and more unfamiliar. So it's hard to ask in advance about some of those numbers. But I will tell you, from talking to the people who are behind the hero campaign, in essence, for all 3 of these amendments, they tell me they think the early vote is actually going to go against them, in part because the opposition really geared up in just the days before early voting started and then the few days after early voting began. So some of those early numbers, they say, we know those are going to be opposed to us. They're looking at the numbers from Election Day today, when perhaps people who put off voting or who were waiting to make up their mind on different issues came to the polls, maybe haven't gone through their whole sample ballot to look at every single thing. They're coming to the polls today. The hero people think that today's numbers are going to break in their favor, and they say that they think people who don't know about this at all, even if they don't hear the big blitz that they've done in the last few days, are going to go in their favor from just reading the language on these propositions, which is confusing and does not get into all the detail of exactly how this would work. So we're gonna have to keep a close eye on the Election Day vote as we start to get those numbers in. These early votes, the folks behind the hero amendments say we expected to lose some of these. Looking at those numbers, it is interesting that they're not losing or winning all of them. It's a mixed bag, right? S currently looks like if these numbers hold, let's say, it will pass. T and U looks like they won't pass, but by different amounts, meaning that voters are picking and choosing on them, which means that some of those voters hadn't necessarily heard the campaign advertising from either side. They're sitting there literally in the ballot box, reading them and deciding what they want to have happen in the city of Dallas. So we're gonna have to keep a close eye on some of these numbers as we get more election day results. It looks like just about 20% of the voting numbers are in right now.
Yeah,
Jason, I'll send it back to you.
It is a good storyline we'll be watching tonight too. Thank you so much for that, Cole. Speaking of numbers, let's get back to Wheeler over here and see what's the big board is looking like. Who is voting for what, especially when it comes to president in this state and for the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, Jason, this is that point of the night where it's really kind of hard because we're just getting that first trickle of those 9 million early votes that happened here in Texas, 9 million plus. But we can start to glean a few little things here. You know, with a lot of these counties, we're using an estimated total vote. The AP, the Associated Press, does this where they put together how many people voted early, and then they reach out to all these elections officials all across the state and ask them, what was your election day turnout like as well? And then with that, with all of that information, they come up with what they think is going to be the number of people voting, and that is this estimated total vote here. Now, when you have counties coming in at 47%, 71% even, you can make a few little assumptions, but it helps when you start getting into the 90s. So let's do that. We've got for Denton County, this is, you know, the AP thinks this is 92% of the estimated vote in Denton County. You can see the former president here up by 53,000 votes or so over Vice President Harris. But let's look at what happened last time in 2020. You can see here that Trump is actually outperforming in Denton County with a good amount of the vote in now, the estimated vote. He's outperforming there. But it's not the same story everywhere you go. You see Rockwall from the last time, he's overperforming there as well. But then you get down here into Kaufman County, you see 64%. He did 66% last time. Again, this is with a lot of the vote counted in these different counties. Let's head down to Ellis County, 65.5% this time. He did about a percentage point better last time. And so that is encouraging to the Harris campaign. Also, of course, encouraging to the Allred campaign because, you know, the fact that people might go down the ballot and vote in a certain way there. Let's bring in the totals here as we look at the U.S. Senate race. Right now, this is statewide. The difference between the two candidates is about 25,000 votes. This is with very little of the vote counted at this point, though. We only have about 2.5 million votes being counted here. Right now, we know that, again, more than 9 million votes were cast just in early voting. But again, you start to see some of this breakdown in the counties as well. We do not yet have in a lot of the big county votes, although we did just see Fort Bend pop on here. That is one that is watched closely by people on both sides of the aisle because that has been sort of a swingy county in recent elections. This is 86% of the vote in there, Allred at 52%, Cruz at almost 46%. We were told on Inside Texas Politics this week by Matt Engel, who is a Democratic strategist. He's looking at several different counties here. Fort Bend is one that they're keeping an eye on, but also Tarrant County is really big. They were saying, he was basically saying that Allred needs to get to like a 52%, a 53% of the vote there to really be doing well tonight. Right now, he's sitting at 48.1%. That's with 69% of the vote in there. He would have to outperform what Beto O'Rourke did back in 2018 when he got almost right at 50%. And again, he's falling short of that, at least for right now anyway. But as you can see, Allred is outperforming Harris there in Tarrant County. So there's some folks who are jumping around on the ballot there, voting differently in different races. Jason.
Show us briefly here Collin County and Denton County as well.
Yeah, I just saw Collin County pop on here as well, so let's take a look at that. This is the first we've seen from them tonight. I'm going to take that out of the view here. This is with 90% of the vote in right now. Allred sitting at 45.6%, Cruz at 52.6%, about a 30,000 vote difference. And again, this is, you know, we go back to that Democratic strategist who talked to us over the weekend. He said he really needs to be, Allred needs to be breaking even here, about 49, 50% in order for this to be a good night for him. And again, that's with 90% of the vote in Collin County. So at this point, they're missing that mark in that campaign. And you wanted to see Denton County as well. Let's look at that. You can see Cruz ahead there by 38,000 votes. Again, that's with 92% of the vote in at this point. So this Collin County number, not encouraging to the Allred campaign. But again, this is 90% of the estimated total vote. We don't know for sure what that total total vote's going to end up being, but this is expected to be pretty close to accurate.
Yeah, a lot of it there. Fascinating insight just 20 minutes after the polls closed in the state. You just saw some more numbers there just a moment ago for District 32. This is the seat that Colin Allred is vacating, a seat in Congress, where he is walked away from to run for Senate. Julie Johnson is a state representative. She is running for that. It's a Democratic drawn seat. This is not a surprise here. Julie Johnson with 61% of the vote. She is fully expected to win this seat tonight. She's running against Darrell Day and Kevin Hale as well, the Libertarian candidate. It's not shaping up to be a good night for Colin Allred at all, Domingo, right now with these early numbers in some of these suburban counties.
Well, again, Texas, Ted Cruz is incumbent senator. He's expected to win. Colin is running a strong race. Right now, I mean, he's only down by 2 or 3 points statewide. And we still haven't seen any of the boxes from South Texas. And some of the Democratic, El Paso, I don't know if it just came in maybe. His vote hasn't come in. We still don't know yet. Still too early.
First reaction to what we saw there.
Well,
Wade,
a good night for Colin Allred is to lose only by 2.5 percentage points. I mean, seriously. I mean, that would be a strong showing for his campaign. It doesn't look like that he's getting close to that right now. Admittedly, these are many early numbers, and so they will change throughout the night, maybe for the worse in some cases. So, I think if Colin Allred wants to feel good about his campaign, he obviously wants to narrow that gap, but he's just not going to win tonight.
Kimmy?
I think so. With those kinds of percentages that you're looking at, you have to also consider what is not good news for the Allred campaign is that this should in some ways be home turf, that if anybody knew him and his message was able to get out there. Although, again, with some of our voters sometimes, it can be difficult in terms of they reach a point, and then once they get to know too much about you, you come on the downside of it. But it's certainly not good news thus far.
And that is a good point. It's home turf for Colin Allred, Bud.
Well, he needs to be performing better at this point in the night. But the point I want to make here is that he's outperforming Kamala Harris pretty substantially. Usually it's Donald Trump who's the drag on the Republican ballot, and all the other candidates outperform Donald Trump. This time it's Donald Trump who's running out front, and Ted Cruz is lagging behind.
All right, we're going to take a brief break from here. It's not a commercial break. We're just going to bring in an update for our TV audience. Cynthia Zaguirre, Chris Lawrence, both standing by for that. Don't X out of this window at all. We'll be back in just a moment. And here's the big race on the big board as we go to a break.
For those of you joining us on live television, we hope you're enjoying ABC's national coverage. We are not interrupting it, just using the commercial break to give you a look at local results rolling in right now. I'm Cynthia Izaguirre.
And I'm Chris Lawrence. And for those of you following our continuous stream on WFAA Plus, thank you for watching. The polls closed at 7 o'clock, but with lines out the door in some spots, voters are still casting ballots right now. Here's a live look at some poll workers who are sorting ballots in Dallas County. We're still waiting on results from Texans who just walked in and voted today.
And now to an update on the biggest race in the state for a U.S. Senate seat. We are talking about 9 million Texans who voted early this year.
Yeah, and results from those ballots are just starting to come in. Do we want to go to Jason Wheeler? Yeah, let's go to Jason Wheeler for an update.
Come on over, y'all. Let's talk about that big Senate race here. As you mentioned, more than 9 million people voting earlier. We're starting to see some of that vote trickling in. Right now, we're sitting at about 4.7 million of those votes, so you could consider this to be almost the halfway point of them getting through just the early vote. That doesn't include Election Day itself today. You can see it looks like a tight race right now. You've got a difference of 26,000 votes between the two candidates, with Allred just ahead just slightly. But look at how much of the map has yet to fill in. All of these white counties, we don't have any results from those places just yet. That includes a lot of this rural vote that is expected to once again go all red. And again, we don't have all red, meaning the color, not too all red. And then we have the bigger counties, some of these bigger counties like Harris County, which is the biggest in the state, of course, reporting nothing at this point. So we're still really early on. A lot to watch coming in tonight, Chris and Izzy.
All right. Thank you, Wheeler. And Teresa Woodard and Morgan Young are following the Allred and Cruz campaigns from their watch parties tonight.
Yeah, let's start down in Houston with Teresa. How's the Cruz campaign feeling right now?
Well, they're feeling good, particularly about the turnout that they've seen and all the energy that they have felt at their rallies over the course of the last few weeks. This is downtown Houston. This is Ted Cruz's hometown. Harris County and Houston, certainly not blue areas, but just like in Dallas, once you get outside of the city and you get into some of the suburbs and then into more rural areas, that is deep red. And those are the areas that Ted Cruz is really going to be watching closely tonight. Those are going to be key for him. He spent the morning of Election Day doing radio interviews, trying to talk to Texans all across the state, trying to drive up turnout in some of those smaller places. The campaign, again, is telling me that the energy that they have felt over the course of the last month has been very good, and they believe that turnout is on their side as well. The campaigning now done. Now all that's left to do is wait, and that is the case, of course, for Ted Cruz's opponent, Congressman Colin Allred. He is having his watch party up in Dallas, and WFAA's Morgan Young is covering him tonight. Morgan?
Well, yes, Teresa, we are in the Longhorn Ballroom, which is in the Cedars neighborhood of Dallas. Allred is also hosting his event in his hometown of Dallas. And, as those numbers are coming in, we're also seeing his supporters start to come into this venue. Even from hearing Jason talk in our digital show about those numbers to just hearing Jason Wheeler speak in this cut-in, we know that the numbers are changing. And so the message here has really been one of hope. They knew that this was going to be a fight. Unseating an incumbent is a difficult task. And so when you talk about the counties in North Texas they've been really focusing on, Tarrant County is key. That was mentioned in his final event that was held this afternoon. But the last week of his campaign was actually spent in Dallas, door knocking, doing block parties, really trying to make sure that everybody votes. His message has been he wants to be the change in Texas, and he believes that it's going to take every single person voting to make that a potential reality. Back to you.
All right, you'll see a lot of Morgan and Teresa tonight. If you're watching us over the air, we're going to send you back to ABC programming. But if you want to keep up with the local and statewide races, the school bond proposals, stay with our election special on WFAA+.
Yeah, our special results show will be streaming on your smart TV. You can download the free app on Roku, Apple, or Fire TV.
Yeah, we're just getting started tonight. You're going to hear a lot more from our panel of experts and our political team. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll see you soon.
All right, welcome back to our streaming coverage of the Texas vote in this historic election in 2024. There's nobody else in the state that has as robust of coverage planned for you as we do here at WFAA. It's not just for North Texas. We're covering races across the state. But let's talk about the state legislature now, too, because we got into the Senate races, we got into the propositions at Dallas City Hall, we got into the presidential race, how Texas is performing. Now let's look at two potentially close, always been close in years past. This is House District 112 in the state legislature. Angie Chin Button versus Avery Bishop. Angie Chin Button is the incumbent looking to go back to Austin, and she is ahead right now, about half of the vote in. Democrats felt very confident going into this that this might be a pick-off for them. They might be able to defeat the longtime incumbent, Representative Button, but right now with more than half the vote in, that is not looking like that's the case. 8-point difference there. Let's look at House District 108 as well. This is Morgan Meyer. We have new numbers in for him in his race. He's the incumbent running against Elizabeth Ginsburg, and he is significantly ahead. 5% of the vote in, so this is just a tiny fraction. And we're all kind of snickering in here because this race is always within a couple of points. That's how tight this race here usually is.
Especially in presidential years.
In presidential years when there's a lot more people voting. Wade, let's start with you. The two Republicans who look like they will potentially be going back to Austin.
Yeah, I think it's obviously too soon for either one of them, especially Morgan Meyer's district with only 4% in. Depends on where those numbers came from.
Sure.
But those two districts in particular, 108 and 112, Angie and Morgan are the last Republicans in Dallas County. And in order for them to win their districts, they need to perform as well as, if not better than, the top of the ticket. And so these particular races are interesting for that reason, to see if they can outperform the top of the ticket and hold on to their races, their seats. And so far, the numbers seem promising.
But what's your reaction to that?
Well, of course, what's at stake here, if the Democrats are able to flip 3 seats in the House, then the advocates, the Democrats believe they'll be able to block school vouchers. These are the two of the 3 that Democrats were counting on. So I think that if this continues to go this way, then Governor Abbott will keep the Republicans in the legislature that he wants to pass the voucher bill. Also in Denton County, Ben Bumgardner is winning pretty easily in that seat. So
against Michelle Beckley.
Against Michelle Beckley, they're both. She's a former state rep. So
sure.
The seats that the Democrats were counting on, I haven't looked at the Bexar County, the other seats yet, but so far the Democrats are not able to flip the seats in North Texas.
And you know, we love to get ahead of ourselves here, Domingo. But first reaction to this with these early numbers in for these two races.
The Democrats really had hoped to win and knock out those 2 remaining Republicans.
Sure.
But millions of dollars came in to help Morgan and Angie Button. And we're talking about millions of dollars for a state house race. I think last time I saw Morgan and Angie had raised $3 to $4 million. Those are congressional type numbers. And so the fact that they're winning is not surprising. By the way, both of them are also going to be key in the speaker's race. There's a challenge to the Speaker of the House, who's a moderate Republican. You know, Paxton tried to take him out, and these are 2 of his votes. So maybe that he'll be able to stay in his position if they come back.
Yeah, Dade Phelan looking to be reelected, and they were both supporters of Dade Phelan. Let's go over to Jason Wheeler right now to get an update on what's happening with the numbers coming into Texas.
Yeah, we're getting more of that early vote in here in Texas after the polls closed about a little more than a half an hour ago. And some of the blanks have started to be filled in here. We're on the Senate race, which is the big one here in Texas tonight. And we were talking earlier about these big urban counties. This is where the votes really come in for Democrats, and this is where Colin Allred really had to do well. You start talking about like Harris County, for example. That's the largest county in Texas, third most populous county in the United States. This is usually a huge vote central for Democrats, if you will, here in Texas. And right now you see this difference at 116,000 votes between the 2 of them, with Allred in the lead there in Harris County. This is with 72% of the estimated total vote in, what the Associated Press thinks will be the estimated total vote. You look back, and again, we still have vote to count here, but you look back to 2018, Beto O'Rourke took Harris Harris County with 201,000, a 201,000 vote advantage. That is really huge to run up those advantages in these big urban counties, because last time around, you had here in Harris County, for example, about 200,000 votes to the Democrat, an advantage there. In Dallas County, you had a 240,000 vote advantage. Same thing in Travis County. And they really do bank all of those votes, because here in these collar counties around these big urban areas, that's where Ted Cruz just went in the red collar counties that filled in last time around, and just cleaned off most of that advantage that Beto O'Rourke ran up. And then, of course, all of these other red counties, which don't have a ton of vote in them in many cases, they basically just started adding up throughout the evening. And, you start talking about 865 votes here, 3,000 votes there, and before you know it, it was over with. And again, at least for right now anyway, and again, we still have a lot of vote to count in some of these places, but you start looking at places like Tarrant County, where, Democratic strategists think that Allred should have been, at the 52, 53% level. He's got a lot to make up, and you're looking at possibly only about 31% of the votes still out to be counted right now. Collin County, this is a big number as well. Again, they said he should have been breaking even just about there. He's off by, 7 percentage points there. That's not a good place to be when 90% of that estimated total vote is in. But again, I'm sure that a lot of hopes in the Allred campaign are being pinned on Harris County, but you're starting to lose some runway, some room to run here as far as the amount of votes to be counted still. We're expecting possibly, according to the AP, about 28% more of that vote still to be counted, Jason.
Yeah, still thousands of votes left there, but it is interesting to give us an indication of where things might go tonight. In just a few moments, we're going to go to Austin and bring in Aya Mitra, one of the senior managing editors for the Texas Tribune, to give us a zoomed out look at how some other races are going. 2 congressional races in South Texas were mentioned here a little earlier. We're going to get an update on those in just a moment. But let's talk about kind of the themes and the surprises tonight so far, because the early vote, 9 million votes, is telling in some of these races. Kimmy, I want to start with you. Surprises tonight, what do you think they are?
I think perhaps that the breakaway may be so early in the Allred Cruz, although I do want to echo what Domingo's saying, is you got to keep looking in the valley. The Latino vote has been very consistently, but about 30%. There is a possibility that Cruz might be able to amplify some of that immigration economy message, and that might not play so well. But I think if you start to see early voting coming back down along in critical areas that do not look good, it's increasingly become difficult.
What do you think, Wade?
I think these numbers don't get any better for Allred throughout the night, the percentages at least. I think it's all kind of downhill from here. I think what's more interesting to me is the difference between Trump's performance in some of these counties and Cruz's performance in some of these counties. I would have thought that Cruz would have picked up votes that maybe Donald Trump did not get. Conservatives who would either not vote for Trump or vote for Harris but continue to vote Republican down ballot. It almost seems like the opposite is true.
So what do you think's happening then?
Either voters are voting for Trump and skipping over Ted Cruz's race, some voters, or they're voting for Allred. I mean, the numbers aren't enough that I think is going to change the outcome of the Senate race, but I think it's interesting to see that difference, that dynamic between the top of the ticket and the next in line.
Yeah, but before I bring you in, Bud, let's bring some new numbers in to look at what these look like now, 739 or so. This is the national presidential race, just the national look. Of course, the individual states are going to decide this. 6% of the vote in, and as I look at another map here, this is mainly southern states. This is Republican states. A few Democratic states, Illinois, New Jersey, Delaware, and a few others have come in. You see the number changing live there as we go. So this is the Texas vote, and it's within 5%, which we discussed earlier. That's about half the vote in so far. Can Harris maintain 5%? Can she close in on that number? That's what we're really interested in seeing tonight. And Bud, as we look at this number here, as we discussed the surprises tonight, what do you think they are 40 minutes after polls closed?
I think the biggest surprise so far is the size of the Republican lead in what appears to be the Republican victory. And we've talked on Inside Texas Politics about the growth in Texas and the new voters in Texas and how the new voters in Texas, I think, are predominantly Republican. And we're seeing that in a lot of these suburban areas in the vote that's coming in tonight. The other surprise, obviously, is going to be in South Texas, where some districts, several seats, are going Republican, where the Republicans are flipping Democratic seats, and that Latino men in particular are voting for Republicans across the board in South Texas.
Well, let's continue with South Texas. Kimmy brought it up a moment ago, Domingo. There are going to be Democratic votes in South Texas for Colin Allred.
They are. Most of South Texas still remains Democrats.
Sure.
Now, Bud has a great point. Republicans are making inroads, especially among Latino male, and the Democrats are going to have to change their messaging and talk about really economic issues and stop getting involved in culture wars, because I think that's hurting them in the Latino community, especially in those semi-rural areas and those border communities.
Based on what we're seeing here, these early numbers right now, it looks like with the Republican lead that this message of the economy and inflation is resonating with Texas voters.
It is. It's crossing lines, but it's still very close. I mean, if you look at Ted Cruz and Colin Allred, it's still 1 or 2 points. They keep flipping back and forth, and some of the big Democratic counties have not come in yet. So I still think it's going to be close. I disagree with my friend over there, Wade Emmerich.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be 2 or 3 points. Ted Cruz should win. He's the incumbent, but Colin's keeping it close.
All right, here's one of the South Texas races that we were discussing earlier. This is Congressional District 15 in South Texas. Monica De La Cruz is the incumbent. She is running for re-election, and with just 5% of the vote in there in the Rio Grande Valley from San Antonio south, she's way ahead here, but this is a tiny fraction of the vote in. This is a rematch with Michelle Vallejo down there, and this is one of them that Domingo was discussing, that this could be close, and Democrats are hoping this is close. They'd love to get this seat back.
They're trying really hard. I still think it's going to be difficult because the Republicans control the Senate and the House, and they gerrymandered the districts. So this district is actually more Republican than it was when she first ran.
Yeah.
And so she should win, but that's probably one precinct showing up right now.
Maybe one, right?
Yeah, maybe one precinct.
Maybe.
So it's too early to tell.
All right, let's bring in Ian Mitra now. He's with the Texas Tribune, and he is one of the guys we rely on for, the wider coverage to see how things are looking statewide. Of course, they have reporters across the state tonight. Ian, I know you do, and you're watching the coverage come in as we are. But let's talk about what's happening in South Texas, especially the Monica De La Cruz, Michelle Vallejo race. What are you seeing? How are things shaping up so far?
Well, this seems to be kind of a continuation. You see, Republicans have really tried to make inroads in South Texas. They've kind of really capitalized. They've really improved their ground over. You're seeing that in some of these races too. And then a lot of the issues that are being discussed there are really issues that are resonating with folks, issues around economy, things like that. And I think the ground effort is really starting is paying off. It's showing, at least early on, it seems, for Republicans.
And we've been curious leading into this in the days and weeks, heading into this election. What is going to be the issue that swings this election? Is it abortion? Is it the future of democracy? Is it the economy? So far in Texas, at least, it looks like the economy is really resonating.
And you're right, Jason. There's still a ways to go. There's still a lot of votes still to be counted, but that certainly sees to be kind of like the early return here is the economy, and that does seem to resonate. And so that is what also is kind of leading towards that, a little bit of a kind of an anti-incumbent when you're thinking about who's in the White House. That type of message is kind of coming through.
Polls close in El Paso and finalize the state here in, I think, 15, 20 minutes or so. What other surprises are you seeing? What are the themes that you're seeing emerge right now in Texas?
Well, it's pretty much like what we've seen, what we're talking about too. And I think, the opportunities in early voting and Democrats trying to make some big gains, surprising to see kind of Kamala Harris trailing Joe Biden's numbers in some of these early counts in some of these bigger Democratic counties. It's really been interesting to kind of see. And so that does kind of show that this kind of lack of excitement in Texas about kind of the top of the ticket. So there is something there that is surprising. And speaking of the top of the ticket, Ian, the second race on there, the U.S. Senate race, it looks like Colin Allred is roughly kind of where Beto O'Rourke was 6 years ago. He hasn't jumped out to an early lead in a lot of these counties with the initial vote coming in. Yeah, he's trailing some of the numbers that Beto made, in 2018. Certainly, having Trump at the top of the ticket, a presidential race at the top of the ticket, too, definitely creates a different dynamic for Colin Allred in this race than it did for Beto O'Rourke. But certainly, they were probably expecting some bigger numbers in some of these counties, but it's still early.
It is early, and we love to get ahead of ourselves sometimes. I appreciate the insight, man. Good to see you. We'll see you back here in about an hour or so for an update on that. All right, let's head to Tanya Iser. She is at the Gaylord Hotel covering the Tarrant County Sheriff's race. And Tanya, you've been covering the Tarrant County Sheriff's race, issues they have had for months now there. And the sheriff, the incumbent, Bill Wayburn, is seeking re-election against Patrick Moses. There was a party there when we saw it a little earlier. What's it like right now?
Right now, they're actually doing a prayer. They've sang the national anthem, and we've also heard a number of very exuberant speakers. We're going to be hearing from the sheriff here in a few moments. He's going to be speaking and introducing Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne. They're actually expecting about 1,000 people tonight at this party. It is supposed to be really all the who's who of Tarrant County Republican politics, from Kelly Hancock to Brian Harrison, Tim O'Hare. All those people are expected to be here. But you're right, the sheriff has been under a lot of controversy. There have been more than 60 deaths in his jail since 2017. Every week we've seen people, or whenever they have commissioners court, people coming to commissioners court upset about these deaths. The sheriff's position is that most of these people have died of natural causes. And that this is really something that the jail could not do anything about. They did recently change their use of force policy, so there's been a lot of controversy surrounding the way he operates that jail. And the reality is, a jail is the primary function, the primary job of a sheriff. So we'll see what happens tonight, but we are expecting to hear from him soon.
Thanks a lot for that insight. We have some new numbers now we want to bring in from Harris County in Houston. This is the full term to replace the late Sheila Jackson Lee. And Sylvester Turner with a massive runaway there. He's favored to win this, but it is still early, as we do want to point out, only 14% of the vote in. Sylvester Turner, of course, former mayor of Houston, former state representative as well, with a huge lead right there. But it is early. Still, the Associated Press has called this race and said Sylvester Turner is going to Washington, D.C. right now. He's gone from Austin, he has gone to the City Hall, and now he is on his way to Washington, D.C. to complete the term for the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Let's pick things back up in Tarrant County, Bud. I'm curious, the race for Tarrant County Sheriff Bill Wayburn, he doesn't seem to be in any trouble, though, despite this challenge from the right and from the left and Patrick Moses.
There was almost no challenge. There was a Democratic candidate, but he was able to raise, I think I saw $4,000, something like that. Wayburn outraised him almost. Moses raised $8,000. Wayburn raised $200,000. So in a county the size of Tarrant County, $8,000 won't even send everybody a candy cane.
You're already thinking of Christmas here, Bud. We need to get through tonight here first.
Sylvester Turner will go to Washington in January. There's a different race to complete that term from now to New Year's.
Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate that. Let's go to Jason Wheeler now. We are about 11 minutes or so until the polls close in El Paso, which is a Democratic area over there, which will add some more on the board for Colin Allred. But you're looking at the balance of power in the U.S. Senate, Jason.
Yeah, last time around, in fact, El Paso gave the Democrat a 100,000 vote lead there when it came through. Of course, that's where Beto O'Rourke was from, though, so we'll see how that pans out this time around. I want to start with this because I just can't stop talking about this U.S. Senate race here in Texas because it's the biggest one on the ballot. Here's where we started the night with the balance of power in the United States Senate. Things just this razor-thin margin there. Democrats ahead there by one senator, Republicans at 49, Democrats at 51. Here's why this U.S. Senate race here in Texas is so important, because things are so close and because Republicans have made a pickup tonight. This was widely expected to happen with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who caucused with the Democrats, stepping out and not running for re-election. Jim Justice winning that seat tonight. So right now, as it stands, we're at 50-50 in the U.S. Senate. So both both parties are looking for that advantage. And of course, Democrats had really pinned their hopes on the fact that Ted Cruz might be especially vulnerable. But again, as we have been seeing here, he hasn't looked as vulnerable tonight. Although something else for you guys to chew on, you know, we've talked about what the Democratic strategists predicted and expected and wanted for Colin Allred. We also spoke with Matt Mackowiak, who is a well-known Republican strategist here. He says that he expected the former president to outdo his numbers here by several percentage points over his win in 2020. As you can see right now, he is almost where he was in 2020 there as far as the percentage goes, still though with a lot of vote out. And what Matt was telling us was that if former President Trump did not, vastly outperform what he did last time, and if in fact he came in a little bit less than that, that this would be a much harder race for Senator Cruz. And as we have been seeing as we go through different counties, Cruz is running behind what Trump is doing. You can see it by a couple of points over and over again, running behind. And that's what Matt Mackowiak was telling us, was to keep a close eye on what that margin is in the Trump-Harris race, because it would inform whether Cruz would have a harder time with Allred. So we've seen some disappointing numbers for Allred tonight. This is, one of those worry points for the Cruz side. But, again, at least right now anyway, in the overall, Senator Cruz has to like what he's seeing in the map so far tonight.
And Jason, that's interesting with those numbers there, how Cruz is underperforming Donald Trump, what Wade Emmert was talking about just a moment ago, Kimmy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things you have to keep in mind. I want to go back to something excellent that Domingo said about what you can expect out of the Texas and the House races, and that is they've been drawn. In fact, if anything, you may see additional Republican, they may reach that supermajority of 60% that, they're kind of looking for. And that's why I think everybody is so focused on the Senate as well as on Trump, to see what that disconnect is between President Trump republicanism and then the rest of republicanism. And what you're seeing tonight is it's definitely not Ted Cruz, but that may be Ted Cruz.
And that disconnect is telling. It's a storyline we've been talking about since 2016.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what I would have expected. I thought you might have Republicans not vote for Trump, but support the rest of the ticket. And what we're seeing is a lot of Republicans supporting Trump, and then a few not supporting Ted Cruz.
At least 2% of the vote, Bud.
Jason, I don't think this is a big surprise at all. Everywhere around the world, we've seen voters turning out incumbents, regardless whether they were liberal, conservative. There is a strong anti-incumbent vote in this election. It's being applied to Biden and Harris, Kamala Harris. It's being applied to Ted Cruz.
And I can't imagine that you're too upset seeing that 2% there lacking, Domingo.
Again, it's too early to call, but it's going to be tough. I mean, it's tough for Democrats in Texas.
Sure.
You have to be, really have a thick skin and fight these battles, because, when you go to California and New York and you go, wow, why can't it be like that here in Texas? But when you got gerrymandering, voter suppression, and you're outgunned, 5-1 on fundraising, it's tough.
Let's go to some new numbers we have coming in as well. The last few minutes we've seen these come in here. This is the Tarrant County Sheriff's race, which we were discussing a moment ago. This is the early vote, and Bud, this is a little surprising to me.
It's not surprising.
It's not.
Patrick
it's an 8-point.
Moses is completely unknown.
There was a lot. $8,000 in his campaign.
It's an 8-point race, and he had $4,000. How is that?
Oh, you're surprised that it's.
I'm surprised it's that close.
It was, Bill Wayburn's last election. He won by 3 points over an unknown Democrat. So this represents a great gain for the Republican Party over the last race. Bill Wayburn, despite all the coverage and there's been a lot of attention to horrendous deaths in the jail, giant lawsuits, giant settlements the county's had to pay, but overall, he's not the worst sheriff in Texas. Tarrant County does not have the worst jail record in Texas. He's managed to be a mediocre Texas sheriff. And I think that people are very satisfied with it. He's a very strong Republican. He's Donald Trump's favorite sheriff. He just won the National Sheriff's Association Award. He is the mega sheriff all the way.
You have an entire dossier on him.
So when you have the Tarrant County voters, when you have Tarrant County becoming more red than ever, there's going to be no breakthrough tonight. There's going to be no Biden, no Beto, no blue breakthrough in Tarrant County. So you have Tarrant County back to being solid red. You're going to have a bigger Bill Wayburn win.
Wow. And I presume you can attribute a lot of that to, obviously, this being a presidential year, people are showing up for Allred, people are showing up for Harris too. That's where he's drawing a lot of these votes.
He is fortunate to be sheriffs are elected in presidential years.
All right. All right, we're going to walk over here to this other side. I want our producers to tell me what we're walking to because I don't see another screen. We have so many screens in here tonight. I got my screens confused, but I didn't get my guy confused.
I think you have an aversion to coming over and visiting me.
All right.
So come on in.
Let's take this apart because I've been wanting to do this for a minute here. You have a lot of white on the board here, and that means that people haven't reported in. These counties haven't reported the vote results in. But I've been fascinated.
It's not uncommon either at this point.
Right. It's still early. But I've been fascinated. Montgomery County, some of these collar counties, as you were talking about, plus some of the counties here in the Metroplex, Denton County, Collin County, Ellis County below it. At the end of the day, Allred is not performing in those like Democrats had hoped.
Yeah, we should go ahead and switch it over because I think the Senate race is the one that people are watching more closely, and this one is the one that's been closer in the polls than the presidential race. Here's what you're seeing in the presidential race right now, a difference of about 500,000 votes in Trump's favor. Again, this is with 53% of the estimated total vote in. Just to remind people, the Associated Press looks at all of the early vote, how many people voted, then they call around all these different counties. They have people embedded at the elections places at all these different counties, and they say, hey, what was your same day, your election day voting total? What does that look like? And then they put that number together, and that's how they come up with this estimated total vote. Right now, we're still at just about half.
Sure.
And just to give you an idea, 3.6 million to almost 3.1 million. You're still looking at only about 2/3 of the early vote. That's not even considering what happened on election day. So we're still processing what happened in those 2 weeks of early voting here. But let's flip it over to the U.S. Senate here. You can see that this looks close when you look at these percentages. That is about what Ted Cruz won by the last time, about 2.5 points, 2.6 points. It was a super tight race the last time around against Beto O'Rourke. Let's compare those two here at this point. First of all, you can see that Cruz running behind Trump by a couple of percentage points, Allred running ahead of Harris by a couple of percentage points. So you see an inversion going on there. But last time around, Cruz ended up with 50.9%. Look, he's right there, same place. O'Rourke had 48.3, Allred's at 47.2, so he's behind where he needs to be. Cruz is still on target with where he was. But again, a lot of votes still left to come in. But these big counties, Harris County, where Houston is a huge one. We haven't seen this vote total moving in the last little bit, so they're still processing all of that paperwork here. But 116,000 votes separate them at this point in Allred's favor. Again, the last time around when the night was finished, and still a lot of vote left to be counted, Beto O'Rourke had taken Harris County by 200,000 votes.
And is Dallas County performing better for Allred than Harris County is?
Okay, so Dallas County here.
His hometown.
This is again with only about half of the vote in, and he's at 159,000 ahead. The last time around, when the night was over, again, a lot of vote to be counted still. Beto O'Rourke was up by about 240,000 in Dallas County. Let's just see, though, the difference in percentage. Beto O'Rourke bringing in 66.1% of the vote last time. Allred right now sitting at about 63, so that's a little behind again.
Travis County as well.
That is also another huge machine for Democrats as far as getting those vote totals up. Right now, Allred pulling in 71.5% of the vote. This is with 76% of the vote in, so more of the vote has been counted there. 71.5, you can see last time O'Rourke was up 74.3. So again, a few points behind where Beto O'Rourke performed. So, again, the night is early in a lot of these places still, but there's a lot of ground to make up.
There's a lot of ground to make up and a lot of votes left to count. More polls closing right now at 8 o'clock.
The ballots are cast and counting is underway. We have new results coming in here at the top of the hour. The most hotly contested race in Texas tonight, the one for U.S. Senate. Democrat Colin Allred and Republican Ted Cruz locked in a fierce fight that's being watched across the country. Live reports in just a moment from each campaign. Plus, what will the political future of Texas look like? The winners and losers in the state legislative races tonight will tell us a lot and give us a good idea whether school vouchers will become a reality in Texas.
And polls are closing in another swath of states in this hour. Is the race for the White House now coming into focus? Kamala Harris
Do we believe in the promise of America?
versus Donald Trump.
We are not going to take it anymore.
Which one will win Texas and by what margin? We'll tell you why that number is so important. Now, in-depth results, expert analysis, reporters across the state, and a team of journalists giving you the most up-to-date numbers. This is coverage of the historic 2024 election, live from our WFAA studios in Dallas. It is 8 o'clock on the nose here. Polls have closed in El Paso just a few moments ago, and voting has officially ended in Texas tonight. New results coming in here at the top of the hour. I'm Jason Whiteley. Thank you for sticking with us here on WFAA Plus and our other streaming platforms for this historic election night. Polls closed across most of Texas about an hour ago. They've been closed on the East Coast now for 2 hours, and there's a lot in play here. Several storylines are really starting to emerge. Of course, the world is watching to see what happens here. It's not just a Texas race that we're keeping an eye on or a U.S. race, but really Europe, Asia, different parts of the world curious the direction that the United States is going to go after tonight. Voters on the West Coast, though, here's the latest map. Voters on the West Coast, these guys still have 1 to 2 more hours to vote before these polls close. Polls don't close in Alaska and in Hawaii until midnight Dallas time, so there is a lot more to go there, even though we do have a pretty good idea of how those two states have voted in the past and how they'll likely vote in this. But let's get straight to the numbers, because the numbers are kind of running the show here tonight, and Jason Wheeler likes to run the show, so I'm going to hand over the reins right now. Jason, what's it looking like on the big board? Because I see a lot of red.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago I'm not running any shows, by the way. All right, so you do see a lot of red, but you don't see anything unexpected at this point, at least coming into election night. Everything that we have seen has not been a surprise. Just for people at home, if you've been looking at one source or the other, what we're using here when these races are actually called and you see these filled in is the Associated Press and ABC News. And in some cases, one of them hasn't called the race, but the other has. So we put in what both of them have called up to now. Vice President Harris sitting at 74 electoral votes so far, former President Trump at 111. You need 270 electoral votes to win. And you can see a lot of white left to be filled in this map, including every one of these that you see highlighted in yellow, those crucial 7 battleground states where we just don't have any calls yet, and who knows when we'll get those this evening. Of course, we're watching what's happening here in Texas as well. This is the presidential race. You can see Trump running a little bit ahead of where he did in 2020 here. Harris running just a little bit behind where Biden was here in 2020. And of course, all eyes on this huge Senate race here in Texas right now. Senator Cruz up by about 4 points, which is more than his margin was the last time around. But again, a little more than half of the estimated total vote in at this point, so a lot of ballots left to be counted.
And as El Paso closes too, that will raise the numbers here for Colin.
They just came in with a little something there, but that's only a portion of it.
Only a portion of it there. Good deal, Jason. Along with Wheeler's numbers here tonight, we do have a panel of experts putting all of this into context here. With us at this hour, Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA here in Dallas. Vinny Manchillo, fan favorite, political consultant for an ad firm called Glass House Strategy. He is back with us again this year. We appreciate that. Vinny's worked on a number of presidential campaigns and has a lot of experience when it comes to campaigns nationally and in Texas as well. Including this one. We'll talk about this. You done work for the Trump campaign in this cycle.
I did.
We'll talk about that momentarily. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Democrat Krista Castaneda, 2020 Democratic candidate for the Railroad Commission, is with us as well, and a neighbor of mine. So it's good to see you here in studio. Let's talk about the themes we've seen emerge so far. Polls have been closed across the state for about an hour or so, and the themes that I've kind of seen emerge here tonight, no big surprises on the national level yet with the states being called, but the themes that I've seen emerge tonight is Republicans are doing a little better than some people anticipated. Bernadine, I want to start with you on that. It seems like the message that's resonating is not necessarily abortion or democracy or immigration, but the economy.
Well, it's the economy as well as party. The Republicans are sticking with Republicans. And Democrats apparently during the early voting just didn't come out in large numbers. So they're not offsetting the partisan vote. And that is what is happening. And it appears at this point now, as we pointed out, that there are still votes to be counted. But it appears at this point that the Republicans want to stay with Cruz, and they're somewhat happy with Trump at this point. But keep in mind, too, that this is a solidly red state at this point, and you still don't have either one of them in double digits, which you could probably expect in a state such as Texas.
And with polls closing in El Paso, the Associated Press was waiting for that to physically happen before the AP called Texas for Donald Trump, which is not a surprise.
Right.
Because both sides say that they fully expected Trump to win Texas. Texas is not a battleground state. So the Associated Press has called that 61% of the vote count there, but the Associated Press makes these calls after determining how much vote is still left to be counted, where that vote is, and whether the challenger, Kamala Harris in this case, can make up any of it. And the Associated Press says that's not going to happen tonight. Surprises so far and storylines you've seen emerge. What do you think they are, Vinny?
You know, really no surprises to me. I was looking to see how much Cruz would underperform Trump. Wade and I look at that issue completely different.
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of people who were voting Trump and either skipping over the Senate election or voting for Allred. And I put the over-under on that at about 2%, and I think I'm coming in at about right.
Yeah, that is about right.
Yeah,
but why?
right.
That's a question that we've kind of toyed with a lot here. Why are Republicans voting for Trump and some of them skipping the Ted Cruz race?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think number one is likability. The guy's always had a likability problem for many years. His campaign denies it. And they've run a terrible campaign. I mean, they really honestly have. It's been just enough to win, which is what got him through the Beto campaign, and it'll probably get him through this. So they've never addressed the likability issues.
And the unfavorables have been high on Ted Cruz. Bud, first reaction from you on this?
I think what's happening, and we need to go ahead and say this is shaping up as a bad night for Texas Democrats. They're losing seats in the Texas House. They're losing a Texas Senate seat probably. The Republicans already have a very red state. It's totally run by Republicans, and it's getting redder. And so I think that this is a night when Texas Democrats have lost a lot of ground. Tarrant County, which had been at least purple, is going back to solid red. And Democrats are going to have to really look at themselves and say, what has the state party done to slip this far, particularly to crumble in South Texas this way?
Setting you up perfectly there, Krista. What do you think? Are Democrats going to be looking themselves, asking that question?
I think Democrats have a lot to ask themselves,
Really?
including why our brand is so tarnished as compared to the Republican brand. And I do view it to be a branding issue. Our issues outperform the Republican positions on a number of mainstream economic and education and jobs fronts.
What's the problem then, do you think? Why can't Democrats connect with some of these issues?
Because we don't spend any time or money except in the big blue centers. And we rely on campaigns every 2 years to go out and spend whatever money is going to be spent.
Instead of the state party?
Instead of a programmatic outreach to the places that we have got to convince that Democrats are an acceptable choice.
Wow. So the big race tonight, of course, is the one for U.S. Senate, and let's go straight to both campaigns. We have Morgan Young in Dallas tonight with the Colin Allred campaign, and Teresa Woodard went to Houston for the Ted Cruz campaign. And Teresa, I want to start with you because these numbers are looking fantastic for the Cruz campaign. But Vinny just made a good point a moment ago, and I've heard this from other Republicans who've told me privately that the Cruz campaign didn't take this seriously enough, the Allred challenge, into the last minute. The same mistakes they probably made 6 years ago.
Well, that's certainly interesting insight, and it's not the kind of thing that the Cruz campaign is going to admit to by any means, especially not tonight. I just, in fact, was texting with some of the people on the press team for the Cruz campaign saying, hey, how are you feeling? Can you give me anything? And they said, I wish I could, but I can't say anything. So I don't know if that gives you any insight to sort of their button down and they're not going to get ahead of themselves. Maybe they like what the numbers are looking like right now. I can tell you that the crowd here at the watch party has started being a little more tuned in to what they have Fox News Channel up on the big screens here. The crowd has been watching, and you've heard a couple of moments when they've cheered. Mostly that is when maybe a state has been called for former President Donald Trump, but also when Fox News Channel has showed the results that they have so far in this Senate race. And just a few minutes ago, they put up that Ted Cruz was up by 4.5 points, but of course they were saying it was still too close to call. And so the crowd, you could feel sort of them get very excited, and then it went back down. And by the way, I should also say it may look a little empty behind me, but have no fear, it's quite full in here. It's just that the bars and the food are on the outskirts, and so you may not see a big crowd behind me, but the people around the press area who are getting drinks and getting food, there's certainly a lot of them. Again, so like I said, I don't think that the Cruz campaign is going to let on anytime soon with any sort of information about how they're feeling or if there were any mistakes made throughout the campaign. I will say after covering Ted Cruz's campaign in 2018 when he was running against Beto O'Rourke, this did feel like sort of a cut and copy situation here, or cut and paste, I should say, situation here. In the last month or so leading up to Election Day, he did the same thing he did back then, which was that statewide tour of Texas on a bus, hitting a lot of the same areas that you would expect him to hit, the rural areas, the suburbs. We saw him doing that exact same thing this time. But his message, it certainly was resonating with his base, with the people who were coming out to the rallies. If you ever went to one of the rallies or watched one of the rallies, you heard definite messages about immigration and crime and safety and the economy. And then the other message that we all know, because if you watched any bit of TV over the course of the last month or so, you saw so many of the ads about transgender rights here in Texas, and that was a main message that Ted Cruz was hitting, and boy, was he hitting those at his rallies as well. So again, the crowd here feeling good, most definitely, but the campaign staying a little quiet and not necessarily wanting to weigh in on how they are feeling at this moment.
And the bar and the hors d'oeuvres.
Let's go to WFAA's. Oh.
The bar and the hors d'oeuvres is a little more attractive,
Sorry,
it sounds
Jason.
like right
Sorry,
now.
Jason.
That's okay. But Morgan, let me bring you in here because we have a number of South Texas counties, McAllen, Harlingen, Brownsville, Laredo, that haven't reported in. These are blue counties, so this will add more points to the board for Allred. But what's the chatter there like right now?
Well, Jason, I can tell you, like Teresa, the bar and snack line here is also quite long. That's why I was chuckling there. Listen, the crowd here is quiet. They're sitting here, they're watching MSNBC. Not shocking, Teresa's saying that the Cruz crowd is watching Fox News. And you do hear, a little bit of energy when different results come up. We did, the loudest cheer we've heard of the evening is when the Allred campaign actually showed some of the recap video from his campaign. A member of his campaign actually came up and spoke a few minutes ago, and she said that tonight is going to be a celebration. She stood on the stage, she let everybody know what the run of show was going to be here this evening, and really kind of offered a message of encouragement. What's really, really interesting is what Ms. Bernadine just pointed out, the issues that she's realized that Texans are voting about. The economy is what she mentioned, and what's interesting is that this campaign really, really leaned into the issue of reproductive rights. We saw that in the home stretch of this, with the ads that were coming out, aggressive the entire time, but really, really digging into that issue. So for that to be a really big investment in the messaging here, and to not really line up with the issues that it seems like Texas voters are actually, thinking about as they're going to cast their vote, is interesting. And when we're talking about different areas of focus, specifically looking at North Texas, Tarrant County has been a huge area of focus for this campaign. They were speaking about that even today. And we keep bringing up that 2018 election, which was the last time that Senator Cruz was up for re-election. And it seems like this campaign really built a lot of momentum on how close that race was. But as we heard earlier this evening, there are so many new voters in Texas. And we had one expert say, until you actually see what voters do at the polls, that may not matter. So the energy here is quiet, it's a bit subdued, and it's really just kind of focused and paying attention. They knew this was going to be a fight. They put up a fight. They raised a ton of money. Now they're just waiting to see if that investment is going to be fruitful. Jason.
All right, Morgan, thanks a lot for that. Krista, let me ask you this. Democrats, and especially this campaign in Texas, Colin Allred's campaign, focused a lot of attention on the abortion issue. That doesn't seem to really making a difference so far.
Well, I think that the audience is very receptive to women's reproductive freedom. The issue is we have done nothing to grow the audience that's receptive to that message in the parts of the state that we simply don't communicate in. I don't know how much money of the $80 million that's been got spent west of I-35, or frankly in East Texas. Money has to be spent there, and it needs to be spent other than in election cycles to change the brand perception.
It feels like we had the same conversation with this panel 6 years ago when Beto O'Rourke got in his truck and went around the state to all 254 counties trying to do that outreach, and Democrats were like, okay, hey, here we go, we have a path now, we know kind of what to do. But you think a heck of a lot more can be done.
I think that when people get their news from Fox News and AM radio and never hear a contrary statement from any source, it's really hard to spend 90 days convincing them otherwise.
What do you think, Bernadine? The question I want to ask you is about the abortion issue. Colin Allred stood in this studio for the debate and really hammered home the abortion issue. That just doesn't seem to be resonating so far tonight.
Jason, it doesn't seem to be resonating, but I have to look at how Colin Allred actually ran his campaign. Mm-hmm. Because when he came out of the gate appealing to those Republicans who were unhappy with Cruz, and also with trying to get independence and not necessarily trying to reach his base. Keep in mind, he didn't even go to trying to turn out the black vote until towards the end of his campaign, where he went to the HBCU schools. But where was that at the beginning? And at the beginning, it was as if he wasn't even running as a Democrat. So while you can look at the Democrats as a whole, you need to look at his campaign as well, because it's how he ran his campaign. And he was running as if he was an independent instead of a Democrat.
And I want to continue this conversation. Before we go to Tiffany here in just a moment, I want to pull up the numbers for that race so we can talk about that and kind of look and see how that goes here. This is House District 112 for the Texas House of Representatives. Incumbent Angie Chin Button faced a challenge from Avery Bishop, and this is the same number we saw earlier. This is clearly just the early vote in so far. Avery Bishop is the Democratic challenger there. She is 8 points behind Angie Chin Button. Democrats thought this might be a seat that they could win and knock off, because Angie Chin Button has had some close races in the past few cycles, along with Morgan Meyer. Tiffany Liu is there with Avery Bishop tonight at that watch party. Tiffany, what's the chatter over there like?
Yeah, well, the mood is good here. There are a lot of people that are starting to show up right now. They obviously have WFAA on at this time watching us. I want to go ahead and just bring in Avery. She's got a lot of people to talk to, so we want to get to her right away. Okay, polls are closed right now.
Yes,
just tell me how you're feeling.
Gosh, earlier we talked and I said, I feel calm, cool, collected. But now that the polls are closed, obviously, you really think about the work that you've invested in the race. You think about, have I done everything that I needed to do? And I am very, very conclusive in the fact that we have done everything that we can, and we have to let go of control. So as those numbers roll in, we're proud of the work that we have done. We're so excited to celebrate. The inside is packed, and we're still anticipating quite a few people to roll in as numbers continue to come out.
Now, all these people here today, are they your volunteers? Are they supporters? Who are these people?
The people here tonight are a combination of my fellows, so young students, young professionals who have volunteered on this race from day one. They're between the ages of 16 up into the ages of 28. We had about 100 fellows that I've mentored and supported throughout the past 12 months who've gotten to do real groundwork on this specific campaign. And then, of course, volunteers, supporters, precinct chairs. I would not be able to do this without my precinct chairs. And my dad and my mom and my brother, good friends and family are here to cheer on the results as they come in.
You're the Republican incumbent representative, Chin Button. She obviously had a lot of money in this campaign. You really had to shift your the process of campaigning is a little bit different for you, right?
Yeah,
tell me about that.
So for me, I'm a first-time candidate, and Democrats are typically outspent in the state of Texas. There are no campaign contribution limits, so it is the wild, wild west. The last time I checked before the most recent filing is that Angie Chin Button had about $2.7 million in contributions. Did she spend that amount? I don't know. And we've collectively raised and have been given about $1.5 million. So we are certainly the underdog in this specific race. I wish money wasn't a factor infrastructure, but the unfortunate reality is that here in the state of Texas, the more money that you have, the more people that you communicate to. And that's why our strategy is very different. When we win, it's going to be a field margin. It's going to be based on our hard work, knocking on doors. I mentioned earlier, I was on doors at 4 a.m., not doorbelling, of course, letting people sleep, but leaving literature, personal handwritten notes on people's doors, letting them know, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'm out dropping information that you need to get that vote out. And it's 4:30 in the morning, so I really do hope that you vote today.
Absolutely, a hard-fought campaign
Yes.
for you. Of course, we're going to be here watching with you tonight to see what happens. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. So tonight, again, we're at Four Bullets Brewery in Richardson. Her opponent, Republican incumbent, State Representative Angie Chen Button, does not have a watch party tonight, but Chen Button told me earlier today that she's actually going home tonight. At another time, she'll be hosting a luncheon for her volunteers to show her gratitude there. But again, tonight here at Four Bullets Brewery, Avery Bishop, her supporters, and her volunteers and her team, they're all here tonight. They're in good spirits right now, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Let's send it back to you.
All right, Tiffany, great get there too. Thank you for that insight. Let's continue the conversation about this race here. There's the District 32 numbers. We'll get back to those in just a moment when Julie Johnson gets up there and accepts the win for her tonight. But let's talk about this race for Angie Chen Button and Avery Bishop. And Krista, I want to ask you, can Avery make up that 8-point difference?
Well, it's going to be a tough road there in Collin County. It really
Where does she
will be.
see optimism there, I wonder?
Not all the votes are counted.
Yeah.
She's a first-time candidate. You know, it's still early in the evening. It takes a little while for numbers to settle in and to really be processed by your team. I think she ran a great campaign, but she showed, you know, that she's aware of the fact that she was probably outspent 2-1. And neither spend was probably enough to raise the stakes to where people actually understood the difference in the candidates. She's running against an incumbent, and a fairly long-term incumbent.
And then Bernadine mentioned a moment ago, too, about Dallas County turnout for Democrats. This is a Democratic county, but Democrats have done better in previous cycles.
Yes, I still have not seen an explanation as to why our early vote total was down about 20% over 2020. And to Bernadine's point, Collin is here. You would expect that numbers would be better for a hometown candidate.
Wow. All right, before we get to you, Bud, I wanted you to watch this interview here. Scoop Jefferson is in Tarrant County for us tonight, and he is with Sheriff Wayburn, who looks like he is going to be reelected as sheriff tonight. Scoop?
Yeah, we are here at Hurtado's, who is hosting the watch party for Tarrant County Sheriff Bill Wayburn, and he joins us here now. We talked earlier about your campaigning, you campaigning to get reelected. Tell us some of the things that you did to get during your campaign this time.
Well, one, we tried to communicate with the voters and remind the residents of what we have done and what we are doing as far as human trafficking, the issues that we've done in the jail. I mean, from having a great DOJ report to having award-winning jails, and also our narcotics team and our patrol team. We just described what we were doing and that we were going to continue doing that. And we wanted technology to come to bear. We were keenly aware of the threat of the border and dealing with the cartel and dealing with the fentanyl issue, and we explained what we had done with that. And I think they were receptive of it, and we're a very safe county, one of the safest in the country, and I think they want to make sure we continue doing that.
Sheriff, your opponent came out with punches about the jail deaths. More than 60 since you've been sheriff since 2017. You and I talked yesterday. You want people to know what about the jail deaths that have occurred under your watch?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure that people know that 98% of those people really died in the hospital. All of them under doctor's care if they were there. And it was from chronic illnesses like cancer and heart failure and kidney failure. And they're a very sick population. And that's what I tell people is that's a small city. During my tenure, we've booked in 350,000 inmates into jail. And we have an average daily population of 4,100. And while we advocate for those people, 50% of them are chronically ill. They come in the back door on day one, and we medically screen them, and we take care of them. We advocate for them, and we make sure that they get the best care. And that's what I would like for them to know.
Let's talk about moving forward. If you're successful in winning the election today, what do you want our community to know about your plans to stop the number of people that are died in the jail, regardless of how they came in the jail?
Well, for one, I want people to know that I can't raise people from the dead, and I can't keep people from having bad diets and 30 years of heroin use, and all of a sudden, their heart can't take it anymore, and there's not much that we can do about that. But what we are wanting to do, technology-wise, is we're wanting to hopefully do some things that's not quite affordable yet, but we think it's going to get there, where, for instance, we're looking at items that we can attach to an inmate that'll monitor their vitals, and that we can absolutely see that they're in crisis real early. So early alert technology is one of the things we're going to do.
All right, you keeping an eye on the numbers?
Tonight? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Sheriff Wayburn, he is hoping again to get reelected as the Tarrant County Sheriff. We will continue to bring you information from his watch party here at Hurtado's in Arlington. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Scoop, thanks a lot. Good get. Thanks for grabbing the sheriff for us tonight. First reaction, bud.
Did we just slip into an episode of Yellowstone by mistake? I really felt like we'd changed channels all of a sudden into, that wasn't, that wasn't some TV character, was it? Some of the things he says, and that's why people gravitate to him. He looks a little bit like a celebrity. He's Sheriff Gunsmoke. He's got that Marlboro Man kind of look. And
Marshall Dillon, huh?
He's something that people have gravitated to from the beginning. He makes a point, although in crude terms, that has some fact to it. The real problem has been poor training in the jail, and all the attention that the public's given and that even some of the commissioners have given to him have made him focus on training and have gotten him off the campaign trail for other Republicans and made him work harder on a healthier, safer jail. There's a little bit of improvement, and so that's a point he's trying to make. He hopes to have a political career and a greater career somewhere, and we'll see where that goes.
But he's made enough improvements to get reelected here. Where do you think his career goes from here, though?
Well,
he is the Texas lawman, the quintessential lawman.
I think you wonder, does he go for a different county office? Does he wind up shooting for some state or federal position? Where does a sheriff go once you get to be sheriff? Yeah. But he has the profile, and if he hadn't had all these problems in the jail, he probably would have been able to move up in politics already. He's been in office 12 years, I believe now, so he would have moved up if he had just paid more attention to running the jail.
Let's get to the latest numbers with Jason Wheeler on the big board.
Yeah, I thought I'd broaden us out here just a little bit because I know a lot of folks who are watching us obviously want to know what's going on here in Texas, but also want to know what's happening nationally right now. I'm going to take that off for just 1 second and re-explain here for people who may have joined us a little bit later. Right now, what we're doing is we are filling up this map with races, with states that have been called already, where a winner has been named either by the Associated Press or by ABC News. That's what's populated into this map. In some cases, ABC is calling one that the AP hasn't called yet. In other cases, it's the other way around. So we've put everything in here that both of those organizations have called. They've been calling elections for decades and decades. So here's where we are right now. You see at this point, Trump with 163 electoral votes, Harris with 74. You need 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. What we're looking at here, I think that CNN summed it up very well with their headline just a little while ago. Early wins, no surprises. Everything that has populated into this map, I think, have been widely expected by a lot of election watchers. Now, everybody, of course, is looking at what's going on in the, I don't want to give anybody a vote that they don't have at this point. Everybody is watching what's going on with these battleground states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. All told, those 7 states hold 93 electoral votes, and that's where it's all expected to come down to, is those 7 states. I'm going to deselect these out west right now because we don't really have much in for them. We don't have a lot in for Wisconsin either, but we'll leave it selected for now anyway. And I'm going to put the lead on here on the map. all this means, before anyone freaks out if their candidate is not doing what they thought that they might be doing in these different states, these lighter reds and these lighter blues are basically just with 10% of the vote in, whoever has one more vote than the other. So in Pennsylvania, if Kamala Harris has one more vote than Donald Trump right now, that's going to look light blue. If he comes in just a few minutes and has 3 more votes than her, it's going to turn to light red. So no one freak out over that. I just want to bring this in here real quickly because I know a lot of people have been wanting to keep up with what's going on in these swing states. So let's look at it right now. Georgia, 74% of the estimated total vote is in Georgia right now. Trump leading by 189,000 votes. I will say I just checked on Georgia. CNN has a great tool where it takes you down into the actual counties. And right now we're seeing still a lot of vote out in those crucial Atlanta suburbs and in the Atlanta area, which tend to favor Democrats a lot. So, that's still sitting out there. Only 12% of the vote counted in Michigan. You can see Harris up by 60,000 there. A lot of vote left to be counted there tonight as well. North Carolina, Trump ahead by 101,000 votes. Again, though, we're seeing in a lot of those urban areas, though, there's still a lot of vote out. That's why we're not seeing calls in these races. Pennsylvania, 26% of the vote in. Her lead is 215,000. Harris leading by 215,000. That's not a lot of the vote counted, though. And Wisconsin, very little of the vote counted, 9%, and Trump is leading there by about 24,000. Just wanted to give people kind of an update on that because I know a lot of people are keeping up with what's going on nationally as well, and we want to make sure that you're informed there. Before I send it back over, let's just check Texas real quick. I haven't looked at this in a few minutes, and we have seen a good deal more of the vote coming in at this point. Now we're at about a little bit less than 8 million votes counted here, and it's changing as I'm saying that. A little bit less than 8 million, and that's important because we haven't even gotten into then that election day total. We still haven't hit that threshold for when all of the early vote would be in as far as numbers go. We have more than 9 million people early vote. But again, we've been watching this here. Trump right now with, let me take that off real quick, 60% of the total estimated vote. The AP estimating that this is 60% of the vote that's going to come in. Right now, Donald Trump outpacing what he did back in 2020 by about 2.5 points. Harris falling behind by about the same amount, but behind what Biden did here back in 2020. Let's flip it over to the U.S. Senate race, which we've been watching very closely. You can see right now Ted Cruz ahead by about 6.5%. He won the last time by just 2.5% or 2.6%. So he is doing better than he did last time. But again, this is with 60% of the vote counted. Colin Allred, depending on a lot of these big urban areas, and right now we only see still 51% in for Dallas. That number's been sitting there for a while. A lot of votes having to be processed there. 72% in Harris County, which is by far the most populous county. And again, this 116,000 vote lead that Allred has there in Harris County. The last time around, Beto O'Rourke won that county by 200,000. So he's got a lot of ground still to make up there with about a quarter of the vote still out. And there we see Travis County, that's still sitting at about 76% of the vote in. This looks like a fantastic lead here for Allred. But again, last time around in 2018, Beto O'Rourke won it by more than that. Again, still more vote to count, though. We'll see if that starts to come in. Wanted to check in real quick in El Paso because we just came in the 8 o'clock hour when the polls closed there. You can see Allred ahead there by 39,000 votes, almost 40,000 votes. Sounds great, but then you look back at 2018. Look at the percentage here for Beto O'Rourke, 74.4%. Allred right now pacing at about 60%. This is with about 3 out of every 5 votes counted, 3 out of 5 votes counted there. So that percentage is way behind what Beto O'Rourke did back in 2018. Not totally unexpected, though, because El Paso is his hometown. But interesting to see as we start to see this vote come in tonight. You're looking for, if you're the Allred team, where are your bright spots? Where are you looking to see if you're able to make up some kind of ground? And there have been a couple of spots where perhaps, like Montgomery County, for instance, which is a Republican stronghold, you see Cruz at 71% to Allred's 27%. Last time around, Cruz had more. And so, there's little glimmers like that, but certainly not enough to make up what looks like, falling short for Colin Allred from what we've seen so far. But, still a fair amount of vote yet to be put in here, Jace.
Jason, thanks a lot for that. You know what's interesting, guys, is that 6 years ago, Beto O'Rourke jumped out to an early lead, and we were all wondering, well, wow, does Ted Cruz get defeated? We haven't seen that at all, really, tonight from Colin Allred, Vinny.
Yeah, well, I think Republicans have finally come to embrace early voting. So we did really good numbers in early voting this year. Democrats, you brought up, they were a little bit soft in early voting. Republicans came out, and that's a big sea change for us.
One of the questions that I've been asking inside Texas politics and on the Politics podcast as well, too, especially after early voting numbers came in, was where are the Democrats? Crystal's asking the same thing. Where are the Democrats?
Yeah, well, I want to give Crystal another attaboy because she talked about brand. And I think that's the problem here. Colin Allred is not a brand. Beto O'Rourke, very clear brand. Ted Cruz, love him or hate him, a very clear brand. Colin Allred is a collection of issue points. And we never got past that. They spent $80 million. I don't know anything more about him than when he ran for Congress. So they never developed him as a brand.
Well, you're an ad man, so what should they have done? I mean, just introduced us more to him because he ran the stealth campaign for a long time, it seemed like.
Right. I think they didn't use their best asset, which in this case was the candidate. You know, he should have been everywhere. Any podcast with more than 2 listeners, he should have been on it. I mean, they should have had him out everywhere and let people get to know him. He hid behind, I only saw him 30 seconds at a time, and I learned nothing about him.
In the
big
ads.
mistake.
And how about the Baylor football thing? I mean, that's a great Texas story.
It is a great Texas story.
They hit on that some.
They did it in one of the ads,
yeah.
but it's like we just never, they never made him a brand.
What do you think, Kristen?
And I would say had they started running that "I'm coming for your job, Ted" ad sooner.
A lot sooner?
A lot of people would have maybe perked up a little bit faster.
But were people paying attention back then? I mean, that's one of the big things that campaigns grapple with, isn't it? Whether people are paying attention in June or July, or whether they're on vacations.
I mean, yes, but I think it was pretty clear pretty early on that campaign was going to get funded, and it was going to get funded well. Yes. And so you had the opportunity to start laying that groundwork back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, he could have polished his own brand a bit more, a bit earlier.
Jason, I just want to make the point we made here on Inside Texas Politics that Colin Allred is from Dallas. Most of the Democrats in Texas live south of a line from Austin to Houston. They never even heard of it. So this is not somebody. Beto O'Rourke had conflict in the valley and went to the valley more and developed more identity in the valley. He even struggled in the valley in the primary. But Colin Allred was completely a foreign. He might as well have been from Oklahoma to most of the Democrats who live in Texas. He had to totally introduce himself. And by there were people. What was it? A month ago in a poll, we saw that 20% of Democrats said they were not familiar with Colin Allred.
Bernadine?
And it appeared as if he didn't want to run as a Democrat. See, it appeared as if, okay, I'm going to get out here, I'm going to be Cruz, but I want you to see me as Colin Allred. But in politics, you must belong to a party to win in Texas especially. And that was not the way that his campaigning appeared. Remember, on Inside Texas Politics, we talked a lot about where is he? You know, to what you were saying, where is he? He was out courting those Republicans who he thought didn't like Cruz. He was out courting independents instead of turning out his base. And if he had been more focused on that, they would have known more about him. But that was not that campaign.
Let's go to some new numbers for a different race here and see what these look like. House District 63, Ben Bumgarner has defeated Michelle Beckley. So far, let's say with 83% of the precincts reporting here, and he is way out ahead of her, 12 points there. Michelle Beckley, of course, had that seat. She resigned from that to run for Congress, and the seat got redrawn a little bit, I believe, and then she ran for it again. She is not going back to Austin, according to those numbers there. House District 70, this is Plano, Collin County. Half of the vote is in here, and Mahala Plesa is the incumbent. She is hoping to get reelected. She had considerably more money than Steve Kennard in this race, but this is a much closer race than many Democrats anticipated.
Well, that could be true. However, remember, that's the Republican district that she flipped. And apparently she's holding on to it, even with a higher Republican turnout. But she flipped that district.
Yeah.
So it's really a Republican district that she's holding on to.
It was drawn to be a new Democrat district, and she won it. But it's winnable for Republicans. I don't know if they're going to get it done this time, but we shall see.
It's in the heart of Collin County, right in the center
Southern
of Collin.
Plano.
Yeah, Southern Collin County, right there, which is
and as an
fascinating.
incumbent, she had to run a very hard race. So it showed that the Republicans still had influence in that district.
So nationally, CNN had that interesting headline there: early wins, no surprises. But I'm not sure if you can say the same about Texas, Vinny.
That there are no surprises?
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything surprising. This
haven't?
pretty much went right down the line. I think Cruz,
I expected more Democrats to show up. That's a surprise for me.
You know what? I think there's not. I think there's no. I'm going to go back to my Colin Allred thing. He didn't generate any enthusiasm.
How about Kamala Harris?
And let me bring out another point. Go back to the March 3rd primary, where not even 1 million Democrats turned out. You had Republicans. Ted Cruz had about 2 million Republicans who turned out in the primary. They didn't even hit 1 million. So they had, look at the makeup that he had to do. So the Democrats were not enthused from the beginning, and Colin Allred did nothing to do in order to get them more excited about the race.
And the primary, I think, was sort of squashed by disappointment with Joe Biden. And now Harris comes in, and it's like, well, she's better than Joe Biden, but maybe not as exciting enough to drive out Democrats. I think that's what we're seeing.
That's a good point. What do you think, Bud?
Well, I want to talk, and first of all, let's not throw a lot of dirt on the Democrats, because if this presidential race, if the White House is in the hands of Donald Trump, then the midterm will be a backlash against that administration. So the Democrats will have a great chance to come back and challenge Ken Paxton, Greg Abbott as statewide races where they came within 2 or 3 points before. So let's not throw too much dirt. But the problem is, you look at the Texas Politics Project. Most important issue facing Texas voters. Number 1 was immigration. Number 2 is inflation. You get into border security, which gets into law and order, crime. Then you go to the economy. Only 6% of Texans said abortion was their number 1 issue. Education is not even on the top 10. It's not even mentioned in this poll. What do the Democrats run on? Abortion and education. I know that I'm probably the older guy here. I'll look at Vinny's driver's license later. But
show us what you got, Vinny.
When Ann Richards was elected, she ran on a law and order ticket. The Republicans, Bill Clements, had to close prisons to save money. They had released prisoners onto the street. Ann Richards said, "We're going to build more prisons. We're going to lock up the criminals. We're going to make Texas safe." She was a law and order Democrat. The Democrats have to have they had a prosecutor running for president, and they still had no message at all about law and order. They tried to run totally on abortion, and you have to do more than that, definitely, in Texas.
And that goes back to what you were talking about, branding then, Krista, right?
Yes, and I think there's 2 types of branding. I think a candidate has to establish a brand, as you said. I think the Texas Democratic Party has got to establish a brand for itself in places where people don't think about the Texas Democratic Party. Bernadine's exactly right that candidates have to turn out their base. And at the same time, Democrats as a party have got to plow some ground to lose less in the places where we lose a lot. That's how we win a statewide race.
Well, you talk about Ann Richards there, and how many Democrats running statewide have been out pheasant hunting? Like Ann Richards. I mean, she was a brand. As you're talking about, she was a brand.
Let me jump in here, because remember, Ann Richards won because they didn't want Clayton Williams. Remember Clayton Williams?
And
Don't forget him.
And the things
That's
he said.
because
And Clayton lost because he didn't pay taxes, not because of what he said. He lost because he didn't pay taxes.
No, he didn't. He lost because he talked about rape. Remember?
He lost the last weekend because he admitted that he didn't pay any income taxes.
We're going to ask for driver's license in a minute, Bernie, to see who's over.
That made people mad. I want to agree with you, though, because Ann Richards, here we are talking about somebody from 34 years ago. Ann Richards won because she knew how to shoot a gun and lead a prayer, and Texas Democrats have not put forth anyone else with that capability.
And a fantastic candidate and a great brand.
She won it, and she lost in her next election.
She got more votes in her next election.
But she lost.
But she lost. She had made Texas so successful
You know what,
that more people flooded in, and they voted for George W. Bush and loved him. Republicans flooded into the state, and Ann Richards got more votes in her second race, but lost because Texas had grown so much.
I'm not dismissing Ann Richards, to be honest with you. I just want you to remember history, and history is that she lost because Clayton Williams was winning, and he was building this huge brand until a reporter went on a hunting trip with him and reported what he said about that.
I know that reporter, and I know what happened, and he was still winning it.
I feel like we need to update our audience on this because there's a lot of people watching this who may not know what was said.
I was just a child then.
So what about, you remember I'm a student of politics as well. But keep in mind, you must know the history in order to do better with the future. Okay.
Well, I don't think you can leave it to the party. Because, I mean, the Republican Party operation is not exactly a well-oiled machine here in the state of Texas. So I don't think you can leave it to the party. You've got to have dynamic candidates with great brands to drag the party along. That's what you've got to have. You need your new Ann Richards.
Because you want to hear about saying a prayer. So let's use a religious analogy. You got to plow the field before you plant the seeds. You can't throw your seeds on rock and expect for them to sprout. So it's both things.
But this has been 34 years that Democrats in Texas have been trying to figure this out, ever since George Bush won, Krista.
The answers are so obvious. I don't understand why we're still here.
Let's go to Natalie Haddad. She is on the breaking news desk with some new information tonight. Natalie.
Hey, good evening to you, Jason and crew. I wanted to bring you some news coming out of the Fort Worth area, specifically Northwest ISD. This is a school district. It is one of the fastest growing school districts in North Texas. We talked to their superintendent about that in August. It has a Justin postal address, though. They had voters trying to decide on a tax rate that would have increased the maintenance and operations tax rate by 3 cents. This vote has failed. It would maintain class sizes and student programs had it passed. The district has a $15.8 million deficit. District officials say if this had passed, it would have generated $16 million in new funding. Now, tonight, the district releasing a statement saying, in part, we will analyze potential changes to class sizes to begin the 2025-2026 school year. The district will work with department and school leaders to create additional budget solutions. Northwest ISD will continue to advocate for state lawmakers to adequately fund public schools. And now, as the district continues the financial planning process for next school year, they say they will create various budget scenarios based on potential updates or a lack of change to public school funding. And we bring this up because this is something that a lot of our races, our Republicans and Democrats vying for their seats, see a big difference on with school vouchers, school choice, with their Democrats saying that this will be a hindrance on public school funding, and then our Republicans fighting saying that this will not be the case at all. For a reminder for our viewers, Texas ranks 42nd in the nation per student funding. That is about $4,000 behind the rest of the nation per student funding. And this district, Northwest ISD, they are not the only ones who are going to see, who have seen issues rather with their school districts. Earlier this year, we had Coppell ISD. They closed their oldest elementary school. Plano ISD had 2 elementary schools and 2 middle schools closed. Fort Worth ISD announced this year that they will be consolidating 7 middle schools down to 3. And this all surrounds the issue of funding. So now Northwest ISD adding to that list of not having enough money to keep their classrooms running efficiently. Jason.
Natalie, thanks for that insight. And let's have this conversation about school vouchers, because that's one of the other big things. You know, Governor Abbott already has a press conference for tomorrow in Tyler to talk about school vouchers. And it's hard to believe, but the legislature reconvenes in, 60 or something days from now. And this election is likely going to decide school vouchers. Isn't that right, Bud, do you think? Because Democrats haven't flipped any seats to stop it.
I think now it's deciding the amount of the school voucher, whether it's going to be gigantic or just big. Yeah. Certainly the races are going strongly. However, some of the Republicans who are winning are pledged to support Dade Phelan for Speaker. And Dade Phelan has worked with the rural Republicans and Democrats as well to at least moderate the impact that vouchers will have on public school districts. So the speaker's race will have some impact. I think that we will see a giant voucher plan in Texas, and there are more seats flipping than ever. The 2 seats in Dallas that Democrats have not been able to flip, I don't think they've flipped a single seat statewide. So I think vouchers were safe by 3 seats, and I think Governor Abbott has a little more padding now.
Well, let's take a look at 2 of those races. Morgan Meyer and Angie Chin Button are 2 incumbent Republicans. This is still the early numbers for this race, and it's kind of surprising for Dallas County because it hasn't been updated in an hour and 48 minutes here. But Morgan Meyer, the incumbent, has always had close races in this seat. This is Preston Hollow, Highland Park, Park Cities. And he is at 59% of the vote. Elizabeth Ginsburg, the Democrat, challenging him, 41% of the vote. Democrats are hoping to knock off Morgan Meyer to protect public schools, to stop that. And with that vote, 5% of the vote in, tiny little fraction there. That's not going to happen. Angie Chin Button, Tiffany Liu was covering this race a moment ago. Avery Bishop, the Democratic challenger, still had some optimism in this race as of about a half hour ago. She is still, with half the vote in, she is still behind Angie Chin Button by about 8% of the vote, but still a lot left to be counted there. The question is where it is to be counted there. And I think Bud's right, Bernadine. At the end of the day, this might come down once again to how much of the vouchers are going to pass. Governor Abbott wanted $10,000 for anybody who wanted to go to a private school, and then Dade Phelan and some of the other rural Republicans said, okay, well, let's just do maybe, kids who are in special education programs or things like that who can't get the kind of education that they should get from their public school. Yes. What are you expecting to see, Bernadine?
As to how much?
School vouchers and how much. Is that going to be the debate?
They will get school vouchers. But, and then the way that Governor Abbott has strong-armed state representatives, he's set to get exactly how much he wants. Because the only thing that might save those who don't want the 10,000 or don't want what Governor Abbott wants is they have 2 more years to run for election. That's it. Because Abbott is going to get his vouchers.
What do you think?
Well, I think we'll definitely have to see some form of vouchers pass. I think what they put out last time, the law they wrote was just not passable. So I think you'll see a legit voucher one. Maybe it's, and the governor will have to give a little bit. So maybe it'll be means tested. Maybe it'll be restricted to certain counties. He's going to have to give a little bit to get the votes, but he'll get it one way or the other.
Krista, you think so too? Do you think vouchers are going to pass? I mean, that's likely going to be front and center when the legislature returns to Austin.
I think that Abbott's whole strategy has been to make sure that vouchers pass, and it looks like it's succeeding. Yeah. So I do agree that the devil's in the details. Who gets them, for which purposes, and how much. It seems like the states that have experimented and passed vouchers for everybody anytime are regretting those decisions. We'll see if any of that logic prevails here in Texas.
All right, let's go to see, we have 4 or 5 minutes here before we need to bring in our TV audience, but I want to see some of the latest numbers from Jason Wheeler, and he's been tapping away at the keyboard over there. But I'm curious what things are looking like now, 2 hours after polls closed across most of this state, and there's a little more red on the map. But none of those states are a surprise.
Yep. Again, no surprises as to what we're seeing in the national map at this point, Jason. If we bring it back here to Texas, we have had more of the vote counted now, and more of it just came in. There you see, we're at about 8 million votes counted. You can see the state has already been called by the Associated Press and by the ABC News in favor of Donald Trump. He's ahead by almost 1 million votes here. That U.S. Senate race is the one that everybody's been watching closely, but this isn't looking too close at all, with about 2/3 of the estimated total vote in at this point. Senator Cruz is up in this one by about 8 percentage points. You'll remember he won the last time in 2018 by just about 2.6%. So we're still waiting for more of the vote to come in, but in a lot of these places, as you just make your way through the map, you'll see that Allred is underperforming O'Rourke by 3, 4, 5 points in a lot of these urban counties where you needed to do well. I think we wanted to look at these propositions as well, these amendments in Dallas, ST&U. We'll do that next time. Jason, back to you.
All right, Jason, thanks a lot. You know, a few minutes ago, Vinny, Jason showed us the numbers from North Carolina and Georgia, which are two states that Donald Trump really needs to win to lock things up, and he is ahead right now, still with a lot of votes left to be counted.
Mm-hmm. Our internals show him picking up both those states. I mean, it's obviously too early to call, but
Sure.
but it looks good from our end.
And if he picks those states up, that's, you know, it's not unheard of that he might pick those up,
Right.
and flip Georgia back to being red.
Yeah, and so I guess the question is, you know, is that indicative of some other states he might
Is it?
pick up? I don't know. I think still Pennsylvania's the big prize. You know, can he pull off Wisconsin or Michigan? I think that's what we got to watch for. Pennsylvania's still the big prize.
It is, and we hope to have something in the next 24 hours would be
we're not
great,
gonna.
huh? or 24 minutes would be even better. Listen, we're going to take another one of those brief breaks to update our TV audience. Cynthia Zagheri, Chris Lawrence, both standing by for that. We're not going away, though. Our streaming coverage continues here in just a moment.
Good evening. If you are joining us from ABC News, we hope you're enjoying the network's coverage of election night. We're coming to you during a commercial break to get you up to speed on all the local results rolling in. I'm Chris Lawrence.
I'm Cynthia Zagheri. We also welcome those of you streaming on WFAA Plus. Polls have been closed in Texas for nearly 2 hours, and we're starting to see some initial numbers from ballots cast today. Let's take a look at watch parties from both campaigns in the race for U.S. Senate. The Cruz camp is in Houston tonight, and Allred's campaign is gathering in Dallas right now.
You know, we have reporters covering both events to bring you insight from their campaigns, and we're going to go straight to them if either candidate takes the stage. But first, let's hear from our political team. Jason Wheeler and senior political reporter Jason Whiteley at the big board with the latest numbers.
You know, I've been asking this question for several days now, since early voting ended. Where are the Democrats? and we're just not seeing him on the big board here
Yeah, I think Colin Allred is wondering that tonight as well. He hasn't been running up the kinds of leads in big turnout places usually for Democrats like Harris County, Dallas County, not as big as usual as in Travis County. Meantime, we've been seeing Ted Cruz doing better than he did back in 2018 in places like Amarillo and Lubbock and Midland and Odessa, just running up numbers beyond what he did the last time around. The presidential race here in Texas has already been called for Trump by ABC News. Cruz still ahead here. This hasn't been called by any measure, but about 2/3 of the vote in, and he's up about 8 points. He won last time by 2.5.
And of course, the other big races we were watching here is in Dallas City Hall. Propositions. This is Proposition S. People are for this, for people being able to sue officials at Dallas City Hall. This is winning right now. They are against, though, changing city manager pay to performance-based pay. If you solve homelessness, you get more money. If you lower the crime rate, more money. People are against that. And this is the big question I've been wondering about here tonight, too. Dallas Proposition U, police pay. People are against setting aside money to hire more police officers. Chris and Cynthia?
All right, great update. And if you're watching us over the air, we're going to send you back to ABC programming and their 2024 election coverage.
And if you want to keep up with our local and statewide races, our election special is streaming right now on WFAA Plus, free to download right now.
All right, thank you for watching.
All right, here we are. We're back on with the latest Texas results, the streaming coverage we've had for the last 2.5 hours or so. There is some activity right now in Houston at the Ted Cruz campaign. Teresa Woodard is there, and Teresa, that has filled up behind you, and you have some news about Ted Cruz coming out.
Yeah, we are expecting to hear from the senator sometime in the next few minutes. I do want to tell our viewers what's happened. So they've been watching Fox News Channel, and Fox News Channel has declared Ted Cruz the winner in this race. And so a lot of folks here in this crowd extremely excited. They are awaiting Ted Cruz, his appearance here to make his victory speech. But of course, the Associated Press and ABC has not officially called this race. So I do just want to, there's a lot of nuance there. But his campaign has told me he should be coming out momentarily. We did see just a few minutes ago several of his campaign workers who were up there on stage, and they were throwing T-shirts out into the crowd. The crowd definitely quite pumped up. They're playing music, and they feel as if it is the time to declare victory. I've been texting with the Cruz campaign just to see if they would give me any little nugget about, you know, what time did they feel like this was a done deal? Also, had they heard from Congressman Colin Allred? But they just told me you have to wait to hear from Senator Cruz himself. So we are expecting him to take the stage to deliver a speech here sometime soon. I was told it would happen at the top of the hour, but of course, you know how that goes. Sometimes they don't necessarily always hit exactly their mark that they're supposed to. Again, some of the campaign staff came out earlier, threw the T-shirts out. They were really exciting people in the crowd. and I can hear there's a lot of, music pumping up everybody as well. I think when you think about this campaign, you think about what Ted Cruz did. He really sort of ran the same kind of campaign he did in 2018, but this is a different year. He's got a presidential election, and so that's probably driving out turnout in some of those rural and suburban areas where he really needed to do well, and he certainly did. Think about moving forward. This means that Ted Cruz gets another 6 years in the U.S. Senate. That means when all is said and done at the end of this term, he will have been representing Texas for 18 years. Last night, this was interesting, at his final campaign rally of this re-election campaign, he was here in Harris County, in Cypress, which is a community in the northwest side of Harris County. And he was running late because there were so many storms across the state of Texas that his campaign plane couldn't take off from Denton, and then it had trouble landing in Houston area. And so Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was sort of trying to amp up the crowd and keep them excited. And something that Dan Patrick was talking about last night was not even, the votes hadn't even ended for 2024. He's already started to talk about 2026. And Lieutenant Governor Patrick said he believes that we will have a challenge in the U.S. Senate race. He believes that Ken Paxton will be challenging John Cornyn in that race. I know that's not breaking news. We've heard that several times before, but it was interesting to hear it on the night before election night, 2024, to hear them talking about 2026. So I'm going to take another look over my shoulder here. You can see the crowd still pumped up. They're ready to hear from Ted Cruz, but we just haven't heard from him, his campaign, since I guess it was about 10 minutes before 9 when they told me that he would be out at the top of the hour. So we're going to keep watching it. We're going to keep standing by and waiting for him to take the stage. But for now, I think we'll send it back to you. We're prepared and ready to take it whenever Ted Cruz does come out and take the stage.
All right, Teresa, thanks a lot. We're going to keep an eye on this camera here as well, but I do want to bring in Morgan Young at the Allred campaign headquarters in Dallas at the Longhorn Ballroom. And are you hearing chatter there from Democrats?
Well, Jason, if the Cruz campaign, if the energy there is one of victory, I can tell you that the event here is not one of defeat. There isn't chatter of the victory that's been claimed there. I will tell you that former State Senator Wendy Davis took the stage a few minutes ago to excite the crowd. She said that they are excited. That is the word that they use. But she did also mention, that she used the term it's too early. So while they're not exactly acknowledging that the Cruz campaign is declaring this a victory, she was very clear to say it is. She said it was too early. She said that there are still parts of the state that tend to trend blue that have not been counted yet. So it seems like a message of encouragement, a message of hope. Okay. And again, she used the word excited. She called this campaign beautiful. So we're not hearing that this campaign has given up or that they are accepting defeat in any way. We are just waiting to hear from the congressman himself. We have not been given a time of when he's going to take the stage. We're just told that his wife is going to introduce him. But still, a good energy in this crowd. We're hearing different cheers as different parts throughout the country are having different races called. 4 more hours to go. So no word yet on what we're hearing on the Cruz side, but we will keep you updated about that. Jason.
All right, Morgan, thank you for that. So we've hit both of those campaigns now. And again, let's bring you up to speed with where the numbers are right now. Again, Teresa saying that they have Fox News blaring there at the Cruz headquarters and that Fox News has already called this race for Ted Cruz. We haven't seen that yet from the Associated Press or from ABC News, and so we're not putting that on here just yet. But the difference you see, almost 694,000 votes between the two of them. And this is with about 2/3 of the estimated total vote in. This is a far cry, Whiteley, from what we saw the last time around when Cruz narrowly pulled out a victory against Beto O'Rourke. But again, some of these counties still blank tonight, and especially most of the Valley down there, which has traditionally been good for Democrats, but we've seen Republicans making inroads there as well. But as I noted earlier, we've seen Ted Cruz outperforming, especially in some of these rural counties out here where he did very well the last time around, but is doing even better this time, like in the Amarillo area, also in Lubbock. We hit Midland and Odessa. He's outperforming in those areas, and those were very kind to him back in 2018 and helped him to fend off Beto O'Rourke, but he's actually outpacing himself from 6 years ago, as you can see. He's still behind Trump, though, in the state by a couple of points. Allred still ahead of Harris here.
Inside here. Here's what I'm curious about. You know, we're going to keep an eye on this camera in Houston, but Vinny, let me ask you, we're going to trade out a microphone over here for Bernadine, but Vinny, let me ask you, it seems a little early for Ted Cruz to come out when there's so much white on that map there on Jason's camera that shows the valley is still out. Now, whether that's enough to make up the lead that Cruz has, I don't know. But secondly, I'm also curious why Ted Cruz would come out right now and not at the 10 o'clock hour, the top of every local newscast in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Does it surprise you that they said he's going to come out in the 9 o'clock hour?
But this campaign has worked in a strange way the whole time. So it's another strange development from the Cruz campaign. And he is, as predicted, running. There's a 2% undervote between Trump and Cruz, which we'll see what the final number is. But that means there's a couple 100,000 people that skipped.
That voted for Donald Trump but did not vote for Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
So there's the camera in Houston. We saw Ted Cruz's father, Rafael Cruz, there. There's Abraham George on the right. He's the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. It looks like other family members there may be on stage as well. We're waiting to see which other family members might be walking up there, which other Republicans across the state that might be walking up there as well. Heidi Cruz is who we're looking for. Ted Cruz is who we are looking for as well. I don't know if that's our camera, if we can zoom out from that or not, but that's the camera we definitely want to watch here in the next few minutes because it does look like that something will be happening there very shortly with Ted Cruz being declared the winner by some networks, not necessarily by the Associated Press or by ABC, which we are following, but they are indeed celebrating there, and it's almost like an NBA game where they're throwing out T-shirts, Teresa said there a moment ago. But quite a few folks on stage. It looks like the senator will be coming out in just a few moments. I am curious to hear what he says, but are you surprised that it's being called so early here, that he's confident enough in taking the victory?
I'm not surprised. If you look at some of the numbers on the Texas website that are not quite matching up, and numbers haven't all been combined to look exactly the same. It looks like Cruz has an even bigger lead. The South Texas has been running 50-50. If I was looking at these numbers with West Texas and half of South Texas ready to come in, I'd be sitting back having a highball and smoking a cigar. And that may be why Ted's not out on stage.
Krista?
Yeah, I mean, the Valley has started to trend definitely more Republican. Personally, I commissioned a survey recently to see how that was changing. And if you ask general election, not primary voters, which party they prefer coming out of the box, it's Republicans 2-1.
In the Rio Grande Valley.
In the Rio Grande Valley.
Which is traditionally a Democratic stronghold until the past few cycles.
Yes. Demographics are not destiny anymore, if they ever were.
Yeah.
I think we've got to look a lot harder at who our voters are and who could be our voters, and we've got to make up some ground.
And he didn't go talk to those voters.
He didn't.
He really,
Colin Allred.
Yeah, he is not. Yeah. He's not going to catch up in the Valley. There's no way.
Bud?
Well, let's talk about what Republicans have always told us about those voters. They've always said that Republicans will keep Latino voters if they emphasize economic opportunity and faith and values. And that's the way the Republicans will continue to dominate Texas. If they can win 40% as the number, 30% of Latino women, 50% of Latino men, then Republicans will keep control. And those numbers are all panning out. That's what George W. Bush's pollsters, Rick Perry's pollsters, told us 20 years ago.
Kim Hogg is on stage. She is the district attorney for Harris County in Houston. She is up there. She's one of the few Democrats who switched over and supported a Republican in this race. She's always kind of leaned Republican, but she is a big scorer for Republicans who have now someone to hold up and say that they flipped a Democrat to support Ted Cruz. So a lot of clapping going on there. The camera's still so wide, I can't really tell who else is on stage, but it looks like that someone is about to walk out right now. Ted Cruz coming on stage. Let's listen in.
God be the glory. Tonight is an incredible night. A huge victory here in Texas. Right now, we're up by 8 points at over 600,000 votes. And they're still counting votes. It also looks very likely that we're going to have a Republican Senate next year. And I believe, and I hope and pray, that Donald Trump will be reelected as President of the United States. I want to say thank you, number one, to my extraordinary wife, Heidi, my best friend in the world. Such an amazing partner on this magic carpet ride of life. And I want to say thank you to our two beautiful and amazing girls, Caroline and Catherine. You know, politics at times exacts a price on the family. And I want to say I am so grateful for their love and support, and you guys are amazing. Thank you. I also want to give a special shout out to Alexis Nungary. Alexis, thank you for your incredible courage speaking out for your precious Jocelyn, and your courage has made such a profound difference in this nation. We're going to. I also want to thank all the Democrats across Texas who crossed over and supported my campaign. Including especially Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg. Who has stood strong for prosecuting violent criminals. And I want to thank every Texan across our great state who has stood with us in this fight, who worked and who fought for Texas. I want to congratulate Colin Allred on a hard-fought campaign. And I want to say to all of those who didn't support me, you have my word that I will fight for you, for your jobs, for your safety, and for your constitutional rights. But tonight, the people of Texas have spoken. And their message rings clear as a bell across our great state. Texas will remain Texas. You know, the media were ready to write off Texas. And Chuck Schumer poured in more than $100 million to our state. Well, I want to say thank you, Chuck. And I hope we win a few more Senate seats tonight because you wasted so much money in Texas. They deployed every trick, every lie, and every Hollywood celebrity they could find. Chuck Schumer tried to buy this Senate seat like it was a piece of Manhattan real estate. But he learned what we've always known, that Texas isn't for sale. And Texans can't be bought. Amen. Over the last 2 years, I've traveled every corner of this state, from the Panhandle to the Valley, from deep East Texas to far in West Texas. We have traveled 9,094 miles, 53 rallies all over the state of Texas. I've worn out my boots, at times my voice, and certainly the patience of my incredible political team, who did an amazing job on this campaign, and I think is the very best team in all of politics. And what I found traveling the state of Texas was worth every single mile. Because everywhere I went, I found something that gives me profound hope. Common sense isn't dead. It is alive and well in Texas. Everywhere I went, I met Texans who share a simple dream: to keep their families safe, to keep their freedom secure, and to keep their Texas values strong. Tonight, we are witnessing incredible results, especially with Hispanics across the state of Texas. And we are seeing tonight generational change in South Texas. The results tonight, this decisive victory, should shake the Democrat establishment to its core. I've spent months in the Rio Grande Valley, sitting in family kitchens, visiting small businesses, praying in local churches. And let me tell you what I learned. Our Hispanic communities aren't just leaving the Democrat Party. They're coming home to conservative values they never left. They understand something the liberal elites never will. There's nothing progressive about open borders. There is nothing compassionate about chaos. And there is nothing Latino about letting criminals roam free. And just for good measure, we're not tacos. We're small business owners who know that lower taxes means more jobs. We're parents who know that secure borders mean safe neighborhoods. And we're families who know that Texas energy independence means prosperity for everyone. And I found this same awakening to common sense everywhere I traveled. I saw it in the eyes of Texas mothers, tired of being lectured to about their values, their faith, and their children's education. I heard it from energy workers in the Permian Basin and the Eagle Ford Shale, men and women who know that American energy independence isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about national security and freedom. It's about families being able to fill their gas tanks without emptying their bank accounts. Look, common sense isn't complicated. It tells us that borders have to mean something. It tells us that laws must be enforced, that children deserve innocence, and that prosperity comes from work, not a handout. And here's what common sense tells us above all, that the people who built Texas, whether their families came 5 generations ago or 5 months ago, understand Texas better than any social engineer in Washington ever will. When I return to the Senate, I carry with me not just a victory, but a mandate. A mandate from the people of Texas. And let me be crystal clear about what that mandate means. First, we must secure the border. Not with empty promises, but with concrete and steel and law and order, and with the unshakable resolve from knowing we are protecting those we love. The cartels who poison our communities, the traffickers who prey on the innocent, their days are numbered. Second, we must unleash Texas energy. The answer to America's energy needs isn't Venezuelans, oil fields, or the Ayatollah in Iran. But rather it is right here in Texas, in the Permian Basin, and throughout the state of Texas. We will drill. We will frack. We will produce, and we will lead the entire world. And we will never again let foreign dictators hold American energy independence hostage. Third, we must defend our God-given rights. Not some of them, not most of them, but all of them. The right to speak truth in an age of enforced lies. The right to worship the Lord God Almighty with all of our heart, mind, and soul without government getting in the way. And the right to protect our families without asking bureaucrats for permission. But above all, this mandate means fighting for what we believe in. Fighting every day, in every way that matters, fighting for Texas jobs, for Texas values, for Texas families, fighting for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And fighting without retreat and without apology. Because this isn't just about politics. It's about preserving a way of life that has made Texas the last best hope for freedom for mankind. I know this in my bones. You see, this isn't just political for me. It's personal. Like all of you, my family journey makes me who I am. Many of y'all know my father, Pastor Cruz. My dad arrived here from Cuba with nothing but $100 sewn into his underwear. He washed dishes for 50 cents an hour. He learned English watching John Wayne movies. And he worked his way through the university, graduating class of '61. That journey from a Cuban prison to Texas freedom From a dishwasher to a small business owner here in Houston to today a pastor spreading the gospel across the state. That's not just my story. That's Texas's story. Likewise, my mom. Who's Irish and Italian, born to a working class family in Delaware, who became the first person in her family ever to go to college. She graduated from Rice in 1956 with a degree in math, and she became a pioneering computer programmer at the dawn of the computer age. My dad is 85. My mom turns 90 this month. Both are here tonight, and I love you both very much. You are my heroes. And here is what Texas promises. Not equality of outcomes, but equality of opportunity. Not guaranteed success, but a guaranteed chance. Not life without struggle, but a life where struggle has meaning, where merit matters. And where dreams that are backed by sweat and steel determination can still come true. That is the promise of Texas. That is the American dream. That's what all of us fought to preserve here tonight, and that's what I give you my word I will continue to defend with every fiber of my being in the United States Senate. Tonight's victory belongs to all of us across the state. Thank you to each of you. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas. I love you.